What's going on, guys? It is exciting to be here talking to y'all. I can't wait to do this because we have another Bears win right after Tampa Bay. Seriously, I couldn't be more excited because this game, you know what? I started out really low on this game because I came away from it, and if any of y'all listen to Bear With Me, my podcast, my first thoughts were, this was weird, a lot of bad on offense, and then suddenly it dawned on me, and maybe it dawned on you too, that in this world of hyper offensive teams, and just to quote Nick Foles and sound like a dorky fan, winning pretty, we are a team that is going to play defense and is basically going to take you back in time, all things told, and play like it's 2006, 2007 again. And I'm okay with that because what I'm about to walk you through is that this Bears defense couldn't have been more impressive in this particular game. And granted, I'll walk you through the schemes, defensive strengths, defensive weaknesses, because the defense in this game, I'll say it if you guys won't, this defense looked like it could win 11 games, a playoff game, and who knows from there, because there is a degree of truth to the idea that once you're in the playoffs, anything goes. And I want to basically walk you through what I mean by that. We're going to go in a lot of different directions. Some of it we're going to be flying by the seat of our pants, but I want to start with the first series because it's this first series that set the defensive tone for everything. And Joe, what you just said is the key here. I want to harp on what Joe said because I'll read his comment. In fact, the defense will make every offense look pedestrian, which means ours just has to be okay. I have to comment on this because Joe, you've nailed it. The big key for the Bears offense, we'll get into this in a second, and good evening everybody, it's great to be with you, hope I sound okay, and we'll get into the show, is that our offense just needs to do what it did against both the Bucs and what it did against the Carolina Panthers, which is no matter how good the offense looks, it just needs to score 20 to 23 points. Credit to them against the Buccaneers. Like I talked about in that Nagy breakdown I did, gosh, was that last week? They ground out the points they needed, and it got them a win. And against the Panthers, they got a lead early, and then they slowly trickled in enough points, consistently answering the Panthers to come out with a win. All our offense needs to do is to be the support for what is a great defense, and again, we'll get into it. But as I'm sure a bunch of you guys caught, because we're Bears fans, this offense was pretty much what we would have hoped an offense back in the golden age of these modern Bears, back with Urlacher, Briggs, and the rest of them would be. Just an offense that scored some, got a field goal here, answered points for points, and kept going. But yeah, anyways, let's keep rolling. And somebody mentioned it. You know what? If we play the Chiefs at all, that's probably a good sign. But let's start with this first Bears series, which, again, so a lot of people have talked about how the Bears' run defense is vulnerable without Eddie Goldman. And you're not wrong. I need to be clear that there's nothing wrong with saying that. But what you need to remember is that the Bears' run defense is different than a lot of people seem to think it is. When you think of a defense that is, average against the run, I think we're 16th in DVOA, you forget that Khalil Mack right here, Akeem Hicks right here, are both elite run stuffers. I mean that very seriously. They're incredibly good at what they do. So when Carolina has the guts to start out with a run that hits the right side, it ends about like you'd anticipate it would, right? So they hand it off, and Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, as you can see, are just going to shoot straight through the gap and set the tone. So this is really key to this Bears defense. If you attack Bilal Nichols in particular with a double team, let's say these two guys gang up and try to seal him out, you're probably going to. Frankly, if they had attacked this hole right here, just calling it as I see it, Robert Quinn, he's a good pass rusher. He's not a great run defender. And it wouldn't have surprised me if they'd have had a lot more success, except they'd be running at the dynamo against the run that is Danny Trevathan. Bizarre to say, I know, but it's quickly becoming truer and truer. Instead, they decide to go straight at the person who I would say is the least desirable to attack, and that's the combination of Mack and Hicks. Mack, who immediately just ghosts underneath his man and slugs into the running back, and again, sets the tone with a 1 yard loss. Bang. But And you know what? That's a great question, Vengeful, and we'll get there in a little bit, talking about Danny T defending the run. But so here's the key, because this is probably the most important thing that I could tell you about this Bears defense, where I get super excited. So the play that you just saw, that's pretty standard Bears, right? Great play from an elite edge rusher in Khalil Mack who stuffs a run. We've seen that a billion times. The whole foundation of the 2018 defense was stopping the run and then playing the pass. Well, this defense works a little differently, and we'll get into more, or like, I can't wait to just hit you with about a billion examples. But basically, this defense covers and then it rushes the passer. And because it's so good in coverage, as you can see on this series right here, where, I mean, you go ahead and find the open guy. If you're playing Dallas, them getting home isn't that strange, but there's somebody open in the backfield. As we slow this down, Jalen's got his man covered, Roquan's covered there. These two are both blanketed, and sure, Bridgewater's under immediate pressure, but oh my word, like, it's not a play just by Bilal Nichols in the pass rush, because the coverage is in place. It's also a really, really nice cover 2 roll. I don't know if you guys noticed. No, Zach, it's not Dallas bias. I'm trying to compare the fact that Dallas's defense is terrible because their secondary isn't very good despite a solid front 7. And with the Bears, it's this back 7 in Roquan Smith and Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson, Kyle Fuller. All these coverage guys make this team as good as it is. And the front 4 being capable shines through because of what the coverage can do. I also want to point out on this play, this is a nice little Pagano action where you're going to see Eddie Jackson fade over and Gibson step back. This is a roll, in case you didn't know how coverage rolls work, where they fake cover 1 with a safety in the box and then roll back into cover 2. Suddenly that changes where he's got to go with the ball, he being Bridgewater, and as you see, he chooses taking a sack over dishing the ball to a Jalen Johnson receiver that's blanketed. And you see that again in the immediate next play. This is a tone-setting drive for the Bears, right? You better believe we will, 1,000 subs. Because immediately after that, the Bears look like they bluffed a cover 4 look with Fuller. So Fuller's pretty far back, and if you remember, cover 4 is basically all 4 of these guys are going to play in quarter zones. So they're all going to drop back, and generally you see those 3 set up into a big zone, and a big zone right there. But the Bears bluff this, as I believe Johnson, it looks like, never mind, it's not a bluff. It's a straight cover 4. But while Bilal Nichols is going to get pressure on a stunt up here, which we'll slow it down so you can take another look at this. So Robert Quinn does a great job cutting inside to set up a stunt, as Bilal Nichols comes around this side totally free because of it. And Bridgewater, who's sitting in the end zone, just has to get rid of the ball. But credit to what Jalen Johnson does over on this side, because he's got his man blanketed, and it ends up as an interception. I mean, it's amazing. And it's this defense is so good at what it does. Seriously, like this is the first series, and what you're seeing is that the coverage is tight, and because the coverage is tight, the pass rush is able to make plays. It's not the same thing as old teams like the like the Steelers, the Ravens, of course the Bears, back in the day with guys like Ray Lewis and all this other talent up front that hit people and hit people and hit people, and that's like the name of the game. This Bears defense is a coverage-oriented defense that also has playmakers up front. So if they want to run a stunt, which, to be clear, running things are running plays like stunts take a little while. This stunt that Quinn pulls is a little long developing. I actually want to take another look at this. Watch this with me. This stunt doesn't take... Envision how quickly Khalil Mack is often able to just beat his guy inside and immediately go hit Bridgewater. Bridgewater has more time than that because of the stunt. He has to go inside, and then Nichols loops around. It's a great plan and a great stunt, but it works because the coverage is as good as it is on the back end. And when Bridgewater decides, well, I just got to get rid of this ball, man, it's got to go somewhere, I'm sitting in the pocket, I can't take a safety, he ends up effectively giving away what we find out is a touchdown. But we're going to do offense later. For now, we're just going to stick with the defense, because seriously, what they are doing is in my opinion anyways, it is the best modern defense that I've seen in a long time philosophically, because it's not trying to stop the run. It's entirely geared to start the pass. And it's funny you asked, Jordan, because while the rule of three is in play, it's not near as prevalent as I would have thought it was. And here's the deal. I want to show you this 22-yard play because, what's up, fairies? What I need to point out is that between the 20s, Carolina was still able to remind us that they're a good defense. Right here, DJ Moore snake bites Jalen Johnson on this little in route. I want you to just take a look at this. DJ Moore's a good receiver, and this Carolina offense isn't near as untalented as they were at the time. And Sam, we'll get to offensive stuff in a little bit. And is Khalil Mack back? He's been back, man. Khalil Mack is playing at a really high level, and between holding calls that literally aren't getting called throughout the league, they're calling about half the holds, and others, like Khalil's playing great ball. But so I point all this out, including that play, and we'll let the defense roll for a little bit because, this is a great example. All 11 guys on this defense made plays. Like, what is this? You've got... So, of course, we have Roy Robertson-Harris, who's having a decent season. Frankly, you can make the argument that he's just okay. I saw plays from Jalen Johnson. I saw Deshaun Gibson flash with that interception. Eddie Jackson made plays in coverage. Kyle Fuller's one of the best corners in the league right now. Like Akeem Hicks, Khalil Mack, Bilal Nichols, Danny Trevathan, Roquan Smith. Oh my word, this defense is loaded with talent, and against Carolina, everybody did something. Here's Bilal Nichols' big moment, so keep an eye on him, right? If you remember, I've been talking about how Bilal Nichols, as this defense transitioned from being a two-gap style defense, which means that Bilal Nichols would technically have responsibility over this gap right here and this gap right here, which is very difficult. One thing that I've seen is they turned him into a one-gapping defensive lineman, where you're going to see Nichols engage this man, but keep an eye on this gap in particular. And as you can see, as this linebacker flows up and Robertson-Harris gets dumpstered, Bilal Nichols keeps his eye on the gap, reaches out, and makes a really nice tackle on what could have been a huge gain. One thing that I always like doing when I'm watching runs to try to figure out, like, okay, how much yardage did they lose, right, is I try to take a look at what the safety does, because a lot of times you'll catch the safety parking at the area that he thinks he's got to set up at to make this tackle. So in this case, you've got so much distance, almost 15 yards between Davis and the safety, that when Nichols makes this tackle and stuffs this to only a 3-yard gain, you could make the argument he's saving between 12 or more yards because he's able to make this play on the run. And because Hicks is as reliable as he is as a two-gapper, and the Bears have kind of shifted to where then Danny Trevathan's over here patrolling and Roquan's only backing him up, all Nichols has to do is keep his eyes on this gap, which you're seeing him do, as he controls his lineman just enough to where when Davis cuts it back, he's ready. He makes the play. This is really, really good. And I didn't see what Mack was doing, but the point here is that everybody, like on the defensive line, in the linebacking core, and especially in the secondary, are all over the football field. And it's really cool to watch because even if the Bears give up a big run, so what? It's a couple of yards. It sounds so silly, but this is a old school bend don't break defense in this case. And we're going to talk about this later. Y'all, okay, I have to pause this almost just to make this clear. Ever since Roquan Smith was drafted, I've always been worried. It's not that I thought that there was somebody else in the draft that should have been taken, because Quentin Nelson got taken just a little bit before, and it was kind of a bummer because it felt like the Bears needed to take this inside linebacker who couldn't take on blockers, and oh well, he'd better be good in coverage, right? So I want to make this clear that when I make the statement I'm about to say, it is different than I've ever said, because especially after last year where Roquan was as up as he was down, depending on the game, I started to feel like all we probably had was a good inside linebacker, probably never able to scrape himself off blockers. I don't know how he's going to be in coverage, and that's okay. But here's the thing, Zach. Roquan is insane. What he was able to do in this game is a different level. Linebackers shouldn't be able to do what he's been doing. Like, check out the foot speed here as he's able to read this crossing route, which comes from this guy right here by the looks of it. As he reads it, strides forward, and takes it out of the air. Roquan must have made probably 7 plays as an inside linebacker, and the overwhelming amount of them were in coverage. This is really, really cool. And the best part about it is that for this idea of a modern defense that's coverage focused, I mean, victimizing inside linebackers is pretty much the name of the modern game here in 2020. This is how people want to operate. It's how most offenses generate simple yards. But oh my goodness gracious, he's taking away yards that most teams would consider free, and there's a perfect example of that either you caught it on my Twitter or I'm about to explain it to you here later in the game. But yeah, I'm really coming around to Roquan, and if he keeps doing this, he's going to be in the legitimate conversation for All-Pro honors at the end of the season, because his work as a coverage linebacker is, I mean, in this specific game, wow, he might be second to none. But so, of course, you're still going to get plays like this. This is the key here. This isn't a defense that's going to take every single play away from you. But I want to be absolutely clear. Like this, I love Buster Skrine for what he is. He's a $5 million nickel corner. Most of these elite players are paid $10, $12 million, so you know he's just all right. And here on an in cut, this is what Carolina wants to do, right? So I've talked before about how Buster Skrine's biggest weakness is change of direction related routes, and DJ Moore, he's a good receiver. One thing that was amazing is that you didn't hear Robbie Anderson's name called until basically the end of the game, because as you'll see if you watch Anderson, he's going to get a bracket coverage from Fuller almost immediately. The Bears did not want him affecting the game. Jackson and Fuller cover him up really cleanly. If you caught it, I'll pull it back one more time just so we can really see this. Like, in the world of defensive strategy, Chuck Pagano wanted to take Robbie Anderson away and make DJ Moore beat them. And as we'll see throughout this game, Moore couldn't really do it. And this was a really great defensive game plan that, in old school Bears fashion, it bent, it didn't break, but, and I almost want to skip ahead so that we can really get into this. Okay, so one thing that they also seemed to struggle with was mobile quarterbacks. Mobile quarterbacks are tough, but no, Biscuit, it's really cool. I can't wait to talk through it. But so mobile quarterbacks are tough because it means that the defensive line has to basically keep contained, and the Bears they got good practice here with Teddy because he was able to grind out a lot of yardage that was I'll call it free yardage and good yardage. If it was Mitch, we would have been really happy with him. So yeah, you get the idea. Eddie Jackson is a tough one to talk about just as we watch some film here, because he's been so good, and he is such a good coverage guy that when he has a down year, it tends to mean that people just aren't throwing at him. Mingo's a solid backup. He's definitely outperformed his station. Here is a play that I think is worth talking about. So again, what we're saying here is that this Bears defense with a press cover corner in Jalen Johnson that's playing out of his mind. With Kyle Fuller, who's taking away short things really, really well, with Roquan Smith at an insane level of detail and coverage ability, basically defenses are forced into a position where they have to make tougher plays. And the only plays that are open are legitimately difficult throws that you just don't get a lot of shots at. In this case, the Panthers pick out a matchup with Buster Skrine right here that Skrine technically loses. Like, that's an open throw, but wow. I mean, Bridgewater can't hit it. The Bears kind of get away with one, and frankly, it almost looks like by the end of it, had this throw been on target, Skrine seemed to be catching up and might have still made a play on the ball in the air. This Bears defense is feisty, and this is something that I think is really cool to see, because it basically solidifies this idea of just about everybody on this defense from a coverage perspective is able to make a play at any point in this game. There's almost nothing that you can plan around victimizing except maybe Danny Trevathan, but in key passing situations, they take him off the field anyways. So which matchup do you pick on? Do you really want to pick on Jalen Johnson? Because at some point he's going to hit the ball away from you. Do you really want to pick on Kyle Fuller? Because that's a terrible matchup nowadays. Roquan Smith, that tends not to go well. Buster Screen, he can hold his own. There are a ton of guys on this defense that all individually can make plenty of plays. And even when you give up runs like this, in my opinion, is a perfect example of you want to get a good run on the Bears, all you got to do is run at the right people. Again, like we talked about earlier, if you run at Akeem Hicks, you're asking for trouble. If you run at James Vaughters, believe it or not, you're probably not going to have near as good a time as if you just double team Roy Robertson Harris, block Mingo, who's okay. He's for what he is, he's all right, but he's not an incredible player. We all know that he's not a starter for a reason. And if you can do that, especially on Roquan's side, the stars have basically aligned. Like, this is we'll talk about that in a little while, Cam. We got a while here. But so if you double team these guys, release off of Roy Robertson Harris and seal Roquan, you're literally targeting the weak side of the defense, and lo and behold, you're able to block them fairly consistently. Double team, puller comes out, and there you go. Basically free access to the deep secondary. I love Roquan Smith. What did I just say? All pro level, but it's almost entirely in coverage. And if you ask him to take on a lineman, you are asking for a bad time. But you can't do this forever, right? Like, you can't just attack one side of the ball with running, because eventually you'll just switch the linebackers and put Trevathan on that side. Trevathan's been about as good against the run as I could ask for, because the key here is that the Bears have become, and finally I'm able to talk about this, get ready guys, we have become a defense that is so good in the red zone, it is almost embarrassing. Of course, like, I mean that in a fun, hyperbolic way. I'm having a great time talking about my team here, but basically, once the Panthers got to the red zone, their offense just shriveled up, and they barely could get anything going, because this Bears defense is ferocious when they don't have to cover near as much ground as they do in the middle of the field. In fact, there's only one, and Mike, okay, so you asked about Roquan, quickly saying it, technically, like, a Mike linebacker might blow him up, but Roquan doesn't have the size to blow up those linemen, and he's always struggled taking on blocks like that. But anyways, so the point is that when the Bears the safeties don't have to drop near as far, and the coverage short can basically sit around like the 10-yard line, even right here, this is where things get really, really dangerous. And I'm sure the Panthers have troubles in the red zone, because just to pick on somebody, they don't really have like a true red zone weapon, because most of their guys are yak related or smaller, like catch it and run guys, and their offensive line isn't necessarily big enough to play bully ball. But here on first and 10, they're going to try, and they only get about 3 yards, because again, the Bears run defense isn't trying to just shut everything down. They're trying to just move the chain onto second down, like move it a little bit. And credit to Danny Trevathan, again, he has become physical. I don't know if he gained weight or anything. We will get to Spain. He's somebody I do want to talk about. I don't know what happened here, but Danny Trevathan went from a guy who played a lot more like Roquan Smith than I expected to somebody who, as you're going to see on this run, is taking on offensive linemen and hitting with force. He is just as good at stuffing the run as a whole lot of these other guys. And it's been huge, because the way Trevathan's been able to play in the run has frankly made it totally worthwhile that he has some issues against the pass, which is perfectly all right. And honestly, I don't think you need to rotate near as much. You want to have guys that can kind of do it all, because then if you're rotating in somebody like Teo, for instance, to do more cover stuff, then not only do you take away one of your best anti-run weapons, because Trevathan, somebody said he's playing angry. That's a great way to say it. He's hitting in the force in the run game, but with Trevathan and Smith, okay, so here's the play. This is one of my favorites, by the way. So right here, we are looking at an empty shot shotgun formation with 3 receivers on the left, as you guys can see, and 2 receivers on the right. Here's the thing. Take a look at these matchups, right? Okay, so the Bears seem to be in cover 1. You've got a bunch of guys who are looking at their men, right? So they're lined up over the tops of their men. It wouldn't be surprising, would it, if this is cover 1 man in some capacity. Might be his own, might be man, could even be Rip Liz, which is its own beast, but the point remains that this is a good matchup to try to get a one-on-one out of, right? So here's the thing. Let's take a look at these matchups for a second, right? So we've got Jalen Johnson on a receiver that's not important in this play. We've got Robbie Anderson over Buster Screen. We've got this receiver on Danny Trevathan, but we've got DJ Moore, a 4.42 speedster out of Maryland, matched up against Roquan Smith. I mean, that's a matchup that you'd want every time, right? Especially off of something like a crossing route. So the Panthers, they love that. And you're going to see, I want to back this up all the way. You actually see in this play, Teddy Bridgewater recognizes this matchup, and he's going to make a call at the line to switch to a play that I'm going to diagram for you in just a little bit. So he signals the play, and what it basically is one of Carolina's favorite red zone stuff, where they're basically just going to have all these guys run a variation of a vertical route. He runs an inside dig. Anderson's just going to run straight up. This guy's going to run a fade, and what's the point, right? It's just to pull these guys backwards, along with Eddie Jackson, create a massive amount of space for Roquan and DJ Moore to have a foot race. And, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I would absolutely take I'd take DJ Moore anytime in a speed matchup against almost any linebacker out there. Well, here's the thing. Roquan matches feet with him and takes the curl route away. And you can see Teddy goes, oh boy, pulls the ball down and just basically runs for his life, takes what yardage he can. But massive kudos to what Roquan Smith and this defense is able to do, because a linebacker in this case shouldn't be able to run with a receiver like this. And major kudos again to Roquan, because he not only anticipates the route and gets a great jump on it, but he covers it beautifully, forces that route back inside. That's basically a sign that the receiver feels he's been beaten as Trevathan drops into that zone-esque role, and nothing's open downfield. Like, take a look at this. This has been the story of the game so far. This is a fast offense that's tough to keep up with, and that's part of why it's scored as much as it has all across the league. And then, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater's basically just resorted to pulling the ball down and taking what he can, because Roquan Smith, of all people, just matched feet with him. This is awesome. And yeah, if we can just leave that. I agree with you, Zach. You get the idea. But so this, of course, pushes the ball to 3rd and 3. This is big time stuff. And you're right. One of the key things here is that the Bears are able, with the solid coverage that they are, to give a pretty talented front four the time they need to make plays on the rush, while rushing the passer. It's a synergetic defense where, instead of what we've seen in the past with these dominant 85 style front fours that give their secondary a bit of a break, this is a much more modern anti-spread style defense that's built to defend against the pass. And while it struggles a little bit, like you can see here with mobile quarterbacks, this defense is built to not only play in the red zone, but basically just deny touchdowns in almost all forms, because it's as hard as it is to push the ball downfield. And we see that here on this very first drive. It's awesome. I couldn't be more excited, because this is a Carolina offense that suddenly everybody around the league is going, they're not very good. Did you see what they did against the Bears? And yeah, they're saying that because this Bears defense played out of its mind. Everybody across this, back seven, front four, the whole starting 11 defense made plays. I want to point out Akeem Hicks on this play, because take a look at this. This is insanity. What you're about to see is that Akeem Hicks takes on a double team, rips this guy away from him. I think it's this one. It's either him or the center. And then a third guy is going to come in, and Hicks is going to make the tackle off of a triple team. Take a look at this. There's the rip. So now it's a single team. He's got another guy stacked up on the back of him, and he drives his man so far into the gap that Mack, who's on a tight end, just bursts forward and goes and makes the hit. Oh my word. Like, you forget that this beast of a person is sitting here on the Bears defensive line, just ready to make plays at any point against the run. So the Bears gang tackle this guy, and they stop it real quick for what they are. And yeah, exactly like you're saying, Sam, that it's not the toughest schedule, but what they were able to do against the Buccaneers, the Cardinals aren't a nothing defense. They scored up and down against plenty of people. They're a very solid offense. Are they the greatest team ever? Not necessarily, but it's a great test for this defense that, again, take a look at this. So this should be open, and had he not dropped the ball, he still gets popped by, what is that? It looks like Gibson, and the Bears move on. I mean, this is a huge, you say that, Zach, it's tough to label an MVP because this really is like a true team defense kind of mentality. If you're enjoying the stream so far, by the way, go ahead and drop a like. That would be awesome. But so This Bears defense basically just stands tall in the red zone exactly when you'd ask for them, and that is the story of this game, right? The defense basically played up the Carolina offense. The offense basically couldn't get anything at any point. Take a look at this. Once again, nothing's open. These two both covered. He's bracketed. These guys have nothing going for them. Fuller winning his one-on-one matchup as the running back goes out and gets covered by what looks like Roquan, one of the linebackers. So the best Danny can do is just run outside and try to take what he can. This is a really, really, really good defense. And the way that they were able to handle Carolina's passing attack, especially once they got into the red zone, it basically made me excited that the Bears, who we saw deny touchdowns to the Buccaneers, we've seen them deny touchdowns again in this Carolina game. We saw them deny touchdowns for the most part against the Colts and against just about everybody else that they've faced, not the Lions. This is an awesome defense that if they can keep doing exactly what you saw here, which is just bend, don't break, force field goals, this should be a very, very, very good team. I want to go over one more because we're already half an hour into the stream, and gosh, I wish I could cover every single defensive play. It's not realistic, but I want to talk through this one right here. It's a beautiful series. So first, they start off with what, again, you gotta kind of get used to, the defense. Occasionally, they're gonna get beat, and if they get beat, it's gonna be off of either a tough play like this, or it's going to be off of a mistake that gets corrected. Or you get the idea. Other people can play or make plays all over the place, and it's not weird. The other team has players that make plays too. But anyways, I'll stop saying the phrase "make plays" and talk about this is what gets so hard. Like Shandell, you're talking about it. This is the modern 2020 game of football where Jalen Johnson's going to man up his guy. Again, I think it's DJ Moore, and they're just going to make a really good play. Old school football, it wasn't this tough, or at least it never seemed this tough to defend half these things. But right there, like, Jalen Johnson is in as good a coverage as you can ask for, and I mean, goodness gracious, what more can Jalen Johnson do but sit in exactly this position as DJ Moore goes up, makes a wonderful contested catch, all things told. Like, this isn't the kind of thing that you rag on your defense for when a guy makes a wonderful play like that. But immediately afterwards, this and that first series we saw in the end zone is one of my favorites. I mean, this is outstanding. And Bobby, you're going to need to give me a little more detail on which 2nd and 10 you're talking about, but I'm happy to go over just about anything. But so anyways, here we are, favorite series of the game. This is my favorite one. So the Bears start out in what looks like Saban's Rip Liz coverage, which basically, in case you don't know what Rip Liz is, let me make sure that it's clear. That's RIP/LIZ. It's a strange coverage that's basically a hybrid between cover 1 and cover 3, and it effectively means that Eddie Jackson's going to sit back here in his cover 1 bubble, and these guys are all going to make a read on their receivers. If they go vertical, they're going to take them vertical. So when these guys, as you see, go vertical, they're going to play them as if they're cover 3. And if anybody else comes across on shorter routes, they're going to basically pinch in, become hook hook defenders and switch to more of a cover one look. And I'll cover just about anything you guys want me to. I mean, this is great. But so as soon as they do, you see this defense adjusts. These two track with the vertical receiver. Nothing gets open and I need to go back and make sure you see it. So you see that nothing's open, but what did you miss? You missed that a role player here in this series, what is it? Mario Edwards is going to beat his man one-on-one on a quick pass rush, and bang, he's in the backfield. He pushes Teddy up. Teddy has to get rid of the ball. Again, this is becoming signature of this Bears defense. It's synergy at its finest. The coverage is perfect. It gives long enough for the pass rusher to go make a play on the quarterback, and then the quarterback has to dump the ball off. Okay, so he survives without taking a sack. Honestly, kudos to Bridgewater and his mobility. This is pretty awesome. So then, right, here we are, 2nd and 10. And a lot of defenses, as I'm sure you guys have seen, they can make one play, maybe even two, but can they make three? So remember, Jalen Johnson got beat recently in coverage, but right here what you're going to see is a cover 6 look, and that's called, a lot of people call it quarter half. So basically this is Fuller is going to drop back and he's going to cover that quarter. This looks like Eddie Jackson. He's going to cover that quarter as Gibson takes that half. Roquan drops into this zone. Johnson comes underneath. There's another zone here, another zone here. This is cover 6. It's cover 2 on this side of the field and cover 4 on that side of the field. And of course, because 2 plus 4 is 6, it's called cover 6. But so there's your football lesson of the day. And what this means is that right here, as Jalen Johnson cuts forward, surprise, surprise, Bridgewater, who I believe is under pressure by what looks like Quinn, though it might be Edwards again. No, I think that is Edwards. Hot dang. Mario Edwards goes crazy on this series. But so he forces a quick throw out as Jalen Johnson, short memory like you guys talked about, immediately bats the ball away. Okay, so here you go. Right here, not only has Edwards made another play in this series on a nice quick move, but the Bears coverage has made 2 plays in a row. We push this to 3rd and 10, right? And so this third coverage, I think it's just cover 3. And it's just cover 3 on a 3rd and 10. But the point is, I want you to watch. Edwards, again, is going to make a great move on his man. And keep your eyes on the coverage. I'll keep this in slow motion as soon as I see the snap. And you're going to see what I'm talking about here. These guys couldn't generate consistent space against the Bears as everything downfield is buttoned up. Edwards makes a nice move, breaks back at the quarterback. Mack comes in to help finish this hit along with Akeem Hicks, and the Bears put Bridgewater onto the ground nice and softly with, a 3-yard sack, and they force a field goal. This is one series, and they beat and they beat and they beat. This is awesome. I love what this defense did. I could go over play after play after play. And if you remember, guys, the only touchdown Carolina scored came off of a ball where they got defensive pass interference on the 1. So they got to skip the red zone. This is such a good football team defensively. And I can't wait to see what happens against teams like the Rams and the Saints, because I really think that there's a solid job. Because that's the thing, Mike, like you're talking about, There's a lot to say here about the Carolina offense, and namely Teddy Bridgewater doing the very best he could. Let me cover this last interception real fast. This is, of course, a game icer, and we all like to talk about just how great of a play it was for the Bears, but there's just not much for this guy to do, So and we'll get to the PI. You guys aren't going to like what I have to say about it, but hey, you know what? We will run it all over the place. But so on this play right here, you're going to see Robert Quinn, I believe, get really quick pressure almost immediately, and this forces a throw with the clock running where Bridgewater, I don't think he saw Houston Carson, and Houston Carson just steps in front of it and has one of the easiest interceptions of his life. This is a wild play because, again, it goes back to that synergy. Somebody up front makes a nice play. Somebody in coverage is exactly where they're supposed to be, and bang, he catches it, he makes a play. And so this defense, top to bottom, couldn't be executing at a better level. Kudos to Chuck Pagano. He's mixing up coverages wonderfully. And what's interesting about it is that if you go back and look at the metrics, their pass rush is getting home at actually a below average rate. My belief in terms of like how do you then reconcile the fact that their pass rush is successful while other pass rushes aren't is because, in my opinion, this pass rush by and large gets more time to operate because of quality coverage behind them and can therefore make plays with a little longer on the clock. They don't need to get home quite as immediately, and that is a-okay. I think this defense has a lot of potential, and especially if they can stay healthy, they're going to be really, really good. I'm looking for the time just to make sure, because I know somebody posted it, a play that we want to look at. Okay. Let's see. Fourth quarter, 9:39 mark. Is it 9:39 still on the clock? Because I'm looking at the fourth quarter. Is it... oh, boy. Is it that desperation call? Is it this one? No. Okay. Am I near it, guys? Because at this point, like, I just want to make sure I help answer the question. And then we'll get back to defense. Like, which player are we talking about? Roquan made a couple of screen tackles. They were really cool. But it's funny because what I would talk about with this specific defense is that I call it inverted. This team, and if we could... look, me personally, I would love it if we didn't swear in the community. You never know what age of who's online. I think it's good to keep it clean, but yeah, I mean, Big Ben, there's a lot of people with opinions about him. But so anyways, what's cool about this defense is, again, it's back to front. I can't say this enough. I'm repeating it just to make absolutely certain that this is something that, like, we all take into account. This Bears defense has gotten a lot of press. I contributed to it with the like rule of 3 video for having, you don't need to apologize. I'm letting you know. It's something that I take seriously too. But so I know that this Bears defense has gotten a lot of press for the bodies and talent that it has up front, but what I think is really impressive, again, is just how well these back 7 are playing. This is really, really, really good stuff. So this pass interference, I've talked to a defensive back friend of mine. I know nobody's going to like it, but what they're calling isn't the catchability. It's that right here, and I'd use it if I didn't get demonetized, right there, what is it? Jalen Johnson has pinned DJ Moore's hand. Again, if I use the broadcast view, I get demonetized. You kind of have to take my word for it. It's here. It's not at the catch point. It's right there. He's got his hand pinned down and is kind of holding him back, and that's the reason that DJ Moore goes up for it with one arm. Oh, calm down. I understand that there are so many people that are going to be like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. Come on. Just know that I'm going to complain about it if it happens to Allen Robinson, so I have to talk about it if it happens here. This very rarely gets called. That's the thing, Casino. This gets called maybe 20% of the time. So I understand if people would look at this and say, I've seen plenty of people do that. How is that pass interference? Know that it is. It just, refs don't see it a whole lot. And it's a bummer, don't get me wrong. And like somebody said, the spot of it's kind of weird, because if I was a referee, I understand wanting to award the yards, but I mean, can't we all agree this is probably defensive holding? Like, this is, I don't think it's necessarily, interference. It's holding to me more than likely, because he's pinning that arm. And of course he's looking back at the ball. He doesn't have to look at the arm that he's holding. But so... No, he did. But that's just my opinion. Based on the broadcast views that I saw, he basically runs with his arm locked in like this. Like, it's not coming out at all. Starting right there, you can kind of see him, I'll slow it down, shuffling with his arm decked back at his side. And that's not common human movement. And not to mention, I tend to doubt DJ Moore is just going to go up for this ball with one hand. To me, this is interference, and I'm okay with that. But you know what? Just because we're on the topic of the refs, let's go back and make sure that you're aware that, yeah, I mean, this refereeing, especially in the second quarter, was enough to make me furious. Because, and short memory, just so you know, Andrew, is the idea of if you make a mistake and you immediately come back and you forget it happened and you make the next play. That's the idea. So I want to start with this missed Allen Robinson call, because this was this really made me mad. bad. So so as you can see there, he goes over the back pretty early, but the key that I want to kind of talk about is there are a lot of rules right now that that favor offenses. You could make a very real argument that this throw from Foles, given the defensive setup and the fact that you're in the red zone, it's about a half second late. Like, let's call a spade a spade. This throw, because of the tight windows, could probably have gotten started already, and because of that, the defensive back is able to reach him early and knock this away. Again, I think it should be interference, but they didn't. And if they had called this the same way when Eddie Jackson then has, let's find it, is it, yeah, it's here. Immediately later in the game, for crying out loud, the same thing happens. I mean, in this one, it's Kyle Fuller. That's who you're trying to watch. He basically beats his receiver to a spot. It's a pure coverage play. This throw shouldn't have been any earlier. And, of course, Eddie Jackson picks off the pass and runs it back in. And I swear the conversation the referees immediately have is, well, I mean, if we don't call that, then the Bears get a touchdown. That's probably too much, and it's ridiculous. Like, exactly like you're saying, Mike, it's the same thing. And the fact that they called it two different ways is where I start to get upset. Because you know what? I'm okay trading this touchdown, right? This one that I just want to finish the play because, I mean, it's a beautiful moment for Eddie. I'm okay trading this touchdown for a pass interference call right here that gives the Bears the ball at the 2. Like, that's as close of a score, or that's as close of a thing to a sure score as you're going to get. And it almost felt like the referees swallowed the whistle because they felt like it was too big a call. But, and that's the thing, Sam, it might have been tipped, it might not have, but either way, it's the fact that they didn't call it both directions that really drove me up the wall, because when you go back to the Giants game and the fact that this kind of thing has happened, it starts to get pretty frustrating when all of a sudden, and again, we can't look at the replays, which is a bit of a bummer, that what are we talking about here with 5 rows? I don't know. I'm sorry. But so this hit right here is really, really pretty. And they showed it, or they showed it a couple times. I'll see if I can't get it slowed down right here. So yeah, Kyle Fuller cuts over, very similar to what he did against the Buccaneers. It looks like it should have been another hit fumble, but instead, because 18 ducks his head and the hit's just too hard, they throw a flag and the Bears get penalized on another hit that just doesn't favor defense. I mean, it's tough because if you go back to the pass interference that Kyle Fuller took, I want to go back to that one real fast because believe it or not, I actually look at this call, and as an unbiased person that just loves defense, watch what Kyle Fuller does, right? So again, here he is at the bottom of your screen. He's basically going to beat his man to his spot. So he figures out that the curl route is coming right there, breaks with him, and has met Robbie Anderson at the point of the ball. So yes, he goes through Robbie Anderson, and I'm not about to pretend that that's legal somehow, but it's more that in the world of reward and cheating, this is really impressive play by Fuller instead of him committing a foul to make up for it. A great example that I could pull from here is a classic hockey penalty called hooking. Maybe you know hockey, maybe you don't. But hooking is basically what happens when a skater stops moving their feet and puts their stick around another person's waist or chest to try and slow them down because, again, they've been beat fairly, so they're cheating to make up the difference. This play is beautiful cornerbacking. Somebody said it. This is how football's supposed to be played as he goes and contests this ball, and it's a huge bummer that ends up being penalized because I would say Fuller earned the play more than the receiver did. And with the what is it? Yeah, that cold shoulder. I absolutely think Fuller should have gotten it, but it's too bad because Kyle Fuller's playing fabulous football. And he's getting penalized for half the stuff he does, and I really hope that changes. Let's see, what do we have up here? Yeah, he read the play beautifully and ends up basically getting penalized for it, which in my opinion, when that happens, like, no, that's not cool. Like, at least let the defense make some plays. So from there, we had a whole bunch of stuff happen. I don't know what's going on with James Vaughters, not just his play, but Vaughters in particular. Yeah, he makes a really nice play here. Him and Mingo collapse the pocket. Vaughters had a really nice game that if I didn't talk about it, I just wouldn't be representing the situation well. Even the depth came through and make plays here. But I agree with Trevathan at the end of the day, where he talked about needing to hold the referees accountable. And that's something that, honestly, after a performance like that, you're just about getting to that point. But the Bears were able to make plays in all phases of defense, whether it was long down situations, short down situations. It doesn't surprise me, basically, that at the end of the game on this 4th and 2 that we can talk about really quickly. First we can take a look at this highlight. I mean, it's funny because sometimes you guys are asking, like, hey, can you break this down? And you already know what happened. Like, it doesn't take a genius to see that this play from Roquan Smith is amazing. Like, this is, and honestly, Quinn, I have no idea what the definition of a defenseless receiver is anymore. But at some point, I would hope that a defensive back is able to basically put his shoulder on a receiver's shoulder and make a hit from there. Because if you can't do that, then I don't even know what to say at that point, because to me, football ought to be played with physicality, and obviously nobody wants to just watch flag football with light physicality. It's weird, but I understand that it's right on the line. But this play right here, I mean, Roquan Smith just makes a great individual effort to annihilate a screen that never had a chance, even though right here, Roquan actually gets blocked by a lineman and just sets himself up well, works his way off, and keeps the play alive for a loss of 4, which is awesome. And from there, that's what's funny, because to me, if you establish possession, you probably aren't defenseless, but that's just a philosophical thing. Remember, I'm defensive focused, so I'm already kind of wrong to some degree. So from here, it's like 3rd and 13, just showing the effect of one play, right? Teddy Bridgewater does what he does. He makes a play in open space. Roquan helps track him down, force him outside, and now it's 4th and 2, right? But I know people have kind of talked about how 4th downs, like especially short 4th downs, like there's always a predictable play call, like, they should run it here, or they should have him scamper, they should pull him into the backfield, just shove it up the gut, they should kick a screen out, they should do short things. I'm of the opinion that at some point when you are looking at a needed conversion, just like the 3rd and 2, I'll say this about the offense as well, it just matters that you get it. And the credit to the Panthers, they pick a play call here that works. It gets what they want, as Buster Screen, who's anticipating one of those short routes that we talked about, gets toasted on an out route, right? So even though he gets toasted on this out route, it's a tough play, and his own guys have his back, because the front 4 gets enough pressure, apparently, to force Bridgewater, if you take a look at him, to throw this off of his back foot. If we slow this down, you can kind of see his footwork just isn't, what is this? He's got a quick step out. It's not that bad, but he misses his open receiver, because this Bears defense, to really gain yardage when you need yardage, you have to come up with a heck of a play. It's tough. Oh yeah, I don't know why that waggles in this film, but it is. But yeah, it's so interesting to me because this Bears defense has set itself up in such a way that the plays that you have to make against it to convert anything are very difficult. And this is just a microcosmic example of a fairly long throw that Bridgewater had to make, and he wasn't able to make it. Moore doesn't come down with the catch, and the Panthers basically lose the game from there. I mean, it's cool. It's really cool to see. This Bears defense is dangerous. Everybody made a play. If you went and asked me for, like, hey, did blank make a play? Yes, they did. And it's been really, really, really awesome to watch. It was a great effort by Moore, but it just wasn't enough. And the Bears are 5-1 off of a defense primarily that is able to keep the score low, and an offense that was able to respond every time that they needed to, which, again, I go back to this. I'll go back to this well over and over and over. It's just cool to see the way that this Bears defense even responded to that Fuller hit. Everybody on this defense agreed that there's no reason for this to be called. That's a legal hit. But instead, Hicks comes through and makes a beautiful play right here. I'm not even 100% certain he gets blocked. But so Anthony Miller's a complicated one, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Hicks comes screeching on through, makes a wonderful hit right there. Yeah, Hicks is amazing. But so from there, this defense was able to stand tall because once again, Carolina just didn't have an answer for them in the red zone. And yeah, I mean, this defense was great. If you want me to take a look at any play in particular, I think I've covered most of the philosophy, because if you take a look at this again, what is this? It's just a 2nd and 11, and the Bears are going to completely swallow up everything. Take a look in particular at Jalen Johnson here. This is pretty cool. I actually hadn't caught this the first time. So Jalen Johnson up here at the top just sticks Robbie Anderson in press coverage. I think that's Robbie, and he didn't get anything. I mean, this is awesome. This whole defense, again, it's a 3-man rush. They don't really get anything, but the coverage forces Bridgewater to roll out of the pocket and get the ball away. This is cool. This defense is just able to play really, really good ball, and I'm really curious to see whether against the Saints and the Rams this keeps up, because this Panthers offense is good. It's not great. But the Bears defense just looked like they were a class above them. With pressure like that sure, Bridgewater escapes it, and he comes out and he takes a big hit from Trevathan and Johnson to get the yards that he wants to go for I think they go for 4th down here. Maybe they kick. No, they kick. And yeah, I mean, you get the idea. So the Bears defense made a whole lot of plays all throughout the game. The Panthers offense had no real answer, and it's just fun Bears football to watch. Now, somebody asked, how good is this team in compared to the rest of the league? And I'll use this as an opportunity for y'all to get your questions in, because whether it's situational play calling, overall play, I hear a lot of Charles Leno slander, and he didn't have a very good game, but he also had Rashad Coward next to him and Cody Whitehair next to him, both of who had an equally bad game against worse players. Like, Brian Burns is pretty much the only player on the Panthers that I would say it needs to be, what is this? Yeah, no, they just... See, it's comments like that. Like, Leno and Nagy have committed treason against us. I mean, come on, guys. Like, Leno had easily the hardest matchup. I don't know why my stream is buffering here and there. But, yeah. What is it? Charles Leno had by far the hardest matchup against Brian Burns, and he got about as much as he gave. This whole offensive line was just a disappointment. I'm not about to try to stand for anybody. It's more like it was all bad. All of it was bad, and yeah, it was tough to watch, because let's go to the first the first couple plays of the game. So we start with a play that could have been a lot cooler, but instead it really wasn't. What is this? Oh, play-by-play stream would be tough, because most of the time I watch the game just like anybody else, believe it or not. It's always easier for me to break this stuff down. So this one's really interesting, because this shows how kind of tough luck can happen. So Anthony Miller is going to get open. I just need to make that absolutely clear. Anthony Miller is going to get open, but the guy playing him lines up, if you can see, sort of an outside leverage. Either that or Foles just didn't think Miller was going to win this route, because he very clearly predetermines he's going to go to Graham, which is a little uncharacteristic of him, but hey, that's what it is. And Miller ends up getting open. I'm sure they're going to talk about this in the film room, and Graham gets the ball with space to operate, but guys, I mean, we all know this, right? He's 34. He ends up taking it going, oh boy, what am I going to do with this? And tries to make a spin move, doesn't get much out of it. So then the Bears go and they run the ball, and actually they get a pretty decent run. The Bears running game is its own mess to talk about, as what is this? Looks like Coward's a little slow coming out of his stance, and I'm never going to try to tell you that Coward is a particularly good player. So he and Montgomery just mess up their timing. They bump into each other as Coward runs forward, and believe it or not, this isn't even that bad a run, all things told. But you talk about it like that, or like it's Foles' fault, but he's throwing it behind him. This is where quarterbacking gets so hard, right? So Foles throws this ball where he does with Graham to try to set him up to stop. The whole point of this placement is that this linebacker is going to come out in front of him. We're just talking about light football things. So this linebacker sees that Graham is coming, and he's going to try to beat him to the sidelines. So Foles throws it on this shoulder with the intent of allowing Graham to basically do whatever he wants with the ball. And as you can end up seeing, Graham lost the foot race anyways. That's fine. Throwing it out in front of him wouldn't have helped. But yeah, anyways, moving on. From there, the Bears, they call a timeout to avoid getting a delay of game. They get a delay of game anyways. It's really, really embarrassing. And then along comes the Bears offense. And on this 3rd and 9, the Panthers, based on what I've seen, the Panthers throw a defensive look at the Bears that they just must not be expecting. Because based on the post-game press conference where Foles talks about how at the end of the day, the ball's not even supposed to go to Kmet, I think Foles just saw that this whole side was open and realized that he might just be able to sneak it into the young tight end, who, massive credit to Cole, he makes a great play on the ball here. Like, this is really cool. And yeah, no, like you're saying, Vengeful, the delay of game coming out of the timeout was terrible. But yeah, Ray, all this walrus terminology is exactly the kind of stuff that play right there, for instance, I see a whole lot of people that'll go bananas over this, but based on every lineman guy that I've talked to, sure, you'd love somebody that just sticks their guy, but at the end of the day, as long as you can keep them off the quarterback, it's not a terrible play. Is it something that you'd like to improve on? Sure, but if you asked me one-on-one, like, who's better, Brian Burns or Charles Leno, I don't have to think about it. Brian Burns is an outstanding edge rusher, and I'm not surprised he made plays against a guy who's, you can call him average, you can call him below average. It's not really important to me. The point is that all the people that are like, let's bench him, it's tough to replace a left tackle. But massive kudos to Kmet and Foles here, because this throw is really, really wonderfully placed, and Kmet makes a not easy catch here to pull the Bears up 7 points. And guys, this was like the whole story of the game. Not to be, not to be like hyperbolic, but that first series by the defense set the tone for the way things were going to be, and so did this series by the offense, who struggled for 3 plays to do what they could have done in 1, but at the end of the day achieved the results that they needed. It was a weird game, because when you look at it from the tail of the tape, you end up getting, so the Bears pick off a pass, they go up 7. Carolina responds with a field goal, the Bears respond with a field goal. From there, the Panthers get another the Panthers get another possession, they get another field goal. The Bears take the ball at the end of the half, they steal a field goal. They basically just kept keeping up. They kept moving the score up. They stayed up 7 the whole time. It was pretty good, and like it was good results. It wasn't great process, because you saw a lot of stuff that just didn't need to happen, a lot of plays that didn't work, a lot of runs that were very, very poor. But yeah, I mean, it was, at the end of the day, they were getting just enough out of the results window, and they weren't going 3 and out, that they kept the defense fresh and were ultimately able to make plays. I think the offense can get better. The Boys Can Swim talked about that, about like, will the offense start taking off? I don't know if it'll take off next week. The Rams are going to be a tough team to do it against, but I think they're going to get a little tighter, and as long as they can, at the end of the day, keep making plays that put points on the board, I think that this defense is going to be able to not only keep people in this game, but they're going to help score. The trouble here is that the offensive line, I mean, this was a rough game. It was a really bad game for a lot of players. I think that the interception is a good place to start, purely because, and I'm sorry for this, guys, I didn't end up getting the notes to where I have a whole bunch of plays that I just want to walk through off of the offensive line, but this is as good as any, because immediately, like, let's go to the behind it view, and no, this is not me excusing anything. Foles should never throw this. Like, we're all on the same page. This should never get thrown, but I want you to keep your eyes on Jermaine Ifedi, Cody Whitehair, and Rashad Coward here, and effectively, they're not going to block anybody. So that happens. Immediately, you've got interior pressure. And despite the fact that Montgomery's going to curl open, and I'll go back and cover Demetrius Harris in a second, Foles basically never gets to hit the back of his drop as he immediately starts running for his life and throws to where the ball should have gone, but throws are way late. So you talk about Montgomery on a check down, you have to remember that he's running fading away at the moment. Montgomery, he's not even technically open yet because he kind of needs to get a little distance from Rashad Coward to create the drop over throwing lane if you're not playing Madden. But yeah, so from here, Foles starts running for his life. And the trouble is that if you take a look at this play, if the offensive line had held anything, I mean any time at all, you're going to see, let's go through it. So this linebacker right here draws coverage with Graham as Harris gets pushed back by this linebacker, and he thinks that he's going to get picked up by the safety. But Harris is running a dig route, and take a look at all of this space. If Foles was still in the pocket and wanted to throw over to Harris, that's a good look. Like that right there is what you want. And Foles still has his eyes in that direction. He's not got eyes in the back of his head. He's not going to see Montgomery. We've talked about that with plenty of other plays. The quarterback needs to keep his eyes where they're looking. But so from here, Foles thinks, you know what? I see him open, and I know I would have thrown it well by now. Like normally the ball would be about here, and it would want to try to land right there for Demetrius Harris to time this thing up correctly. But Foles thinks, you know what? I think I can just throw it now. And he's wrong. Because at this point, the linebacker has already gotten multiple steps back in this direction, and he's the guy who ends up making the play because it is underthrown. Foles is fading backwards, and the linebacker had plenty of time to run out there and go make a play on it. This is the kind of ball that, again, you have to throw it away. But gracious alive, if I didn't point out that the interior offensive line let those, the three of them, let those two guys through without them almost slowing down at all, is at the corner, that doesn't surprise me. I saw him on Graham and thought to myself, he must be a linebacker, but you're right, that's the left outside corner. It's a tough play. It's not one your quarterback should make. He's already outside the pocket. You should throw this away. But you say that a quarterback should know the check down, but you gotta, that's the thing. So this is the kind of thing where somebody's going to come out and say, oh, Leno let somebody through too. I mean, not really. Because you have to remember that an edge rusher normally, like, you're not trying, your friend as an edge rusher and an edge protector is the back of the pocket. It's not uncommon for somebody to take a speed rush and push them out of the back. It's the interior offensive line's guys' jobs to set the pocket. And so if they had set the pocket, Leno can take Burns and push him out the side. But instead, Leno loses leverage purely because he's just on his arc and Foles is out the back of the pocket. There's nothing he can do there. Exactly. Like, no, if Quinn does a rush there, I say he kind of got lucky. Like, this is how it works. This pressure comes from the interior. It doesn't come from the exterior, and that's frankly why even in this moment, Burns isn't making a play on Foles. It's the interior guys. I'm not trying to apologist for anybody. I just want to make sure we're all clear on how this works, where on this interception, Foles has to throw it away. In this situation, the only guys he's watched are this guy right here. He's running for his life. Nobody's really open. You don't know what's going on. It's first down, live to fight another down. That's okay. But yeah, so the offensive line was problematic all game long. I know there's another play right here where the Bears pick up they get 15 yards on the roughing the passer because I think it's the interior line again that, yes, okay, so Rashad Coward garnered some attention. So take a look right here. Rashad Coward just gets beat, and Foles also gets beat on as he lets this ball go. And thank heavens we were able to get a completion out of it. But the offensive line was just getting torched all up and down the line, and it got tough to watch. So Casino, I know you're talking about him checking it down, but again, remember, this guy's they can only look in one direction at a time. You do have to know where your check down is, but it's okay to throw it away on first down. If it was If it was Mitch, I would have said throw it away because you've totally escaped the pocket. You're running for your life. Don't throw backwards cross body. It's a very common rule of quarterbacking that guys like Mahomes and Lamar Miller can deviate from, but that's because they've earned the right to do so. Either way, Quentin Nelson is a much better, or not Quentin Nelson. Whoa, Quentin Nelson is better, but it's Quentin Spain that I'm really curious about, and we can get more into him later if we wanted to. But so there's plenty of other offensive plays that we could go over. One thing that got really interesting was that their running game had a lot of problems, and not all of them were things that they could necessarily fix. I think that's the first drive. There's another one right here where the Panthers kind of caught a couple of breaks at the very start. Where, for instance, if you take a look at this, the Bears are about to run an outside zone handoff where every single lineman is going to execute their responsibility except Bobby Massey, and Bobby Massey's not going to get to his guy because, okay, so I'll talk about it first. Basically, everybody here has to take the person that they're more or less lined up against. So I think it is Coward, and I'm going entirely off of memory. Coward has to take the guy here. Leno has to get out to face that guy. Harris takes the edge defender. Whitehair sneaks through, blocks the safety. This is Ifedi, has to block the guy in front of him, and Massey cuts off the linebacker. Here's the problem, right? So the Panthers guy at the end rotates over and cuts off Massey's angle. All of a sudden, this linebacker right here is totally free. So because he's totally free, he runs over, he hits Montgomery, and it shuts it down. But if you take a look at it, if this defensive lineman doesn't reduce on the end of the line, Massey's path to this linebacker is much clearer, and I wouldn't be surprised if he passes him off, because it's very common to leave that defender right there and ask Montgomery to just get through the hole quicker than he can make a play on it. It's tough luck, and it happens in football sometimes. They run in, whack. I think the wide receivers are just lined up on like this. Somebody asked about it, just to take these guys out of the play, and they do. But the Bears line here actually does a pretty good job, and they get unlucky. Montgomery takes the hit, plows forwards for 3 yards, and they get what they want. But yeah, so I don't know if he's going to get to the mic that quickly. I'm more just explaining what I thought was interesting, which is this idea that because the defensive lineman reduces literally at the snap, there's not a whole lot that the offensive lineman in Massey is able to do, as he ends up getting tabletopped by his own guy, and the Bears grind out 3 yards on the ground. All this to say, there were some things about this running game that I left a little bit feeling better about, but at the end of the day, it's definitely a worry, and going into our game against the Rams, I'm not expecting a ton. But yeah, so Rashad Coward was a real problem all throughout the game. I do want to talk about the positives, though, because on third downs in particular, some second, some third downs, Nagy would call a pass play, and there was like a 50% chance that he'd just get the right defense, and they were able to make some really nice plays. Here on this one in particular, what you're going to see is so the Bears take the snap, and I need to remind myself of the defense that they run. Perfect. Okay, so it's like a cover 3 defense that the Panthers roll into, because they've got the weak side safety here, and he's going to roll back in this direction. But what you're going to see as far as a concept goes is that I believe this outside receiver is going to run up and clear out this man. Allen Robinson's going to run a quick post to the outside, and Montgomery is going to run into the flat route. And so because of this, they're going to end up isolating a defender really beautifully. So this corner right here that's on Robinson effectively has to make a choice. Who's he going to cover? Is he going to cover Montgomery in the flat route, or is he going to stick with Robinson? He chooses Montgomery. Foles reads it immediately. You can see he's already loaded to throw, and he throws into what could be traffic, a really wonderful teardrop to Robinson, who picks up the first down nice and clean. It's a really good play, and they did execute some of these. Somebody talked, we need to stop running. What is it? When you say running on third and longs, do you mean like running the football, or do you mean being in third and longs? Because sure, the idea is that you're not in third and longs almost ever. You don't want to be in third and long. But yeah, so the Bears offensive line here actually does almost a decent job before that blitz on the right-hand side sneaks through. Let's take another look at this. We can break down whatever plays y'all want to. Yeah, so it looks like they've got a quick overload right here. If Fady gets beat pretty badly by this defensive back, Foles gets rid of the ball before it's ultimately able to affect the play, and the Bears pick up a big 3rd and long. Really nice overall. But so, what is this? Oh, okay. We can get to that in a little while, Vengeful, because I've got we've all got different personal opinions about situational play calling, but there are some things that the Bears definitely need to improve on. Another example, if we're going to talk about good things that happened throughout this game, this one's a really beautiful understanding of how to beat the Panthers. What is this? It's like a cover 5 style defense, except I think they drop this guy into the flat and they make it cover 3. So from here, what's going to happen is Allen Robinson is going to run a hook route, and so is Darnell Mooney. And Nick Foles is going to do a really good job, as both of these running backs are going to basically kick out into the flat. Foles is going to do a good job of faking down at this man to draw this corner and opening up a route for Mooney. I want to explain it to you so that you can see it as it happens. So right here, he gives a nice shoulder fake, opens up this window, and drills this throw. It's a really nice play for 11 solid yards. It's good. It's not like, wow, amazing. Okay, English. Meg, I'll talk about it. So the point is that on this play, you don't necessarily know what front the Panthers are going to come with, but you've got a pretty decent guess that you're going to be keying off of this guy right here, because cover 3 is the idea that he's going to drop into this half. You've got an extra loaded safety over here, so you probably want to avoid him. And if you can draw anybody on Cordero Patterson, it's probably going to be this guy. And if he can button down, you can open up a throwing lane. The Bears do exactly that. Foles takes a good look at Patterson to move this safety, and then with that shoulder fake that you saw right there, opens up a clean throwing lane, but now he's got to drill the throw. So he fires about as fast of a ball as he's going to throw. Like, what is it? It's, yeah, so that's about as fast as Foles is going to throw it. Mooney makes a nice play on the ball in the air, and the Bears come down with 11 solid yards. It's good. That's good stuff. So the run stuff, I hope it gets better. I think a lot of it comes down to, a lot of things. There's a play right here that shows, let me find it. It is, Nagy even talked about it in the presser. It was a rough one, but it is right here. Yes. So all of a sudden here in the start of the game, or at this moment, the Bears are in the red zone. It's 2nd and 6. They got a decent play right here. Oh, and you talked about the lack of successful deep passes. I've got a good answer for you there. And I wish I could answer questions in Russian. If you throw them into Google Translate, I'll do my best. But so right here, Rashad Coward makes one of the worst plays I've seen in a good while. And Mega Lucario, in the world of like run versus pass, I like offense that works either way. And if there was a way to hold the offensive line accountable, I'm sure they would. But at the end of the day, you just say, hey, we need better. I want you to take a look at Rashad Coward here, who just gets chucked on the ground, and the guy runs over and makes a quick stop for a loss of 3. These are the kinds of things that can't happen, and when somebody like Quentin Spain shows up on the waiver wire all of a sudden, yeah, you want to take a look at it, because these are the kinds of things that are going to kill an offense when your defensive lineman's just getting trucked and thrown around. But so, yeah, it's tough when talking about the run-pass balance, because not only am I comfortable with a read-like offense doing, 60-40, but the Bears are starting to get to like 66-33, and the problem is that they do so in a kind of predictable manner. Like, if there's one thing that I will hit Nagy for, and one thing that I need to see iterated on, so we've talked about how the Panthers defense made some plays, right? And we've talked about how Rashad Coward didn't play well, and if you take a look at most of the running plays that the Bears ran, that was sort of a theme, and they especially ran them on first downs, which didn't help anything. But the point is that from what I saw anyways, in the first half, you saw issues with the Panthers getting the right defense, and then issues with Coward often missing a block. There's another assignment. Let me find one. I hope it's this one, because if not, I'm going to have to go spelunking. But so there's one of these where, actually, that's not a bad cut block by Coward, but there's one run, and I want to sift for it, where Coward doesn't actually know his assignment, and it was not good to see, to say the least. It is, yeah, it's this one. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So what you're about to see is a 49ers play. People have talked about how the Bears running game needs to be more like the 49ers, and believe it or not, this actually is. So this is a locking action run where what you're going to see is Jermaine Ifedi, Cody Whitehair, and Charles Leno are going to lock all of these guys. So you're going to see Ifedi come over there, not Coward, Whitehair step over here, and Leno get in Brian Burns' way. They're going to just try to create a wall that's going to be slanted like this. And from there, Bobby Massey is going to cut this guy off right here. You see 49ers do this all the time, and Coward is going to circle around. He's going to hit the first guy with him, and then Kmet is going to come in behind him and also hit the first guy with him. The trouble is that there's a miscommunication somewhere, and Coward thinks that this is the version of the play where Bobby Massey's just going to hit his guy instead of this lock block, which changes the trajectory of it, and if I had the play art, I'd show it to you. But so what you see instead is Coward overruns his man and recognizes it late. So Kmet, who understands this guy's got to get picked up, goes and hits him first, as Coward recognizes, hits him late, and this whole thing's fouled up. I mean, it's tough. And so this is a play that, like a lot of these, this side of the line did their job. And another solid play, another example of like the Panthers calling the right defense, they call a scrape, which is this defensive lineman's going to crash in, and this linebacker is going to come over and fill the gap. So the Panthers, kind of by luck, do end up filling the hole with the right defensive call and two linebackers unintentionally. So a veteran line, to be clear, like a veteran tight end and a veteran good offensive lineman, would still struggle with this play. But even so, you see them hit the same guy as they then move on, and Montgomery makes what he can out of it, but it's nothing. So somebody asked, will the Bears trade for a guard? Won't surprise me if they pick up Quentin Spain. But yeah, we'll keep moving. So there's a whole lot of these plays where the Bears offensive line did something wrong. Coward's at the center of a lot of them. But then all of a sudden comes the third quarter, and Matt Rule, to his credit, starts to kind of solve Nagy. But so, and exactly, like these run plays, if they get the blocking down, should gain some yardage. They're just not getting them. So from here, it's first down, and the Bears are probably going to try to go back to basic, right? So that means that they're going to try to start, that means they're going to try to start getting back into their off or outside zone package. And what Matt Rule realizes is that if he takes this linebacker and run blitzes him, he can try to time up the snap count and sneak in to make plays in the backfield, and it works really well. So with these in this case, they just show that they're trying to do what they're doing. We don't even need to break it down. It's just a bad run. But it's especially evident in... Let me find it. It's this first drive right here where they lose yards again, where the Bears are basically going to get snake bit by this linebacker who rushes into the backfield and makes a play right steaming through Coward, and they plant him. So let's take a look at this from behind. Yeah, Charles Leno's run blocking is not especially phenomenal. That's the darn truth. It's always kind of been that way. In this case, he gets ish of his man, but after Coward has turned his guy inside, there's just not much for Montgomery to do because this run is supposed to flow to the right. And so Heisenberg, you're mentioning like just bench him. Who are you going to play? Jason Spriggs? Because that's bananas. The whole line's moving to the right here. So what Leno's block does is supposed to be good enough because Montgomery's supposed to be able to at least try to get through that hole, stay outside if you can. But yeah, it doesn't work. Coward doesn't get the block down. Some of it's scheme, some of it's guys getting confused, some of it's miscommunications. Guys, it is a lot. And when you lose your starting guard, you're going to have issues. But yeah, it's the running game was a problem. Thankfully for the Bears, their passing game stuck with it. They were able to make plays just like this one against the coverages that Carolina passed out because they know what they're doing in the passing game. Again, you get a beautiful isolation play where Mooney's speed is threatening enough that this corner right here has his hips turned inside, and this corner right here is coming down to defend Montgomery. So with that in mind, Foles just throws over the top, and it's nice, and it's 18 quick yards. Of course, what's trouble here is that the Bears, somebody talked about deep shots at one point. The Panthers basically spent the whole game in quarters coverage, which means variations of putting that guy there, that guy there. It's cover 4 by name naturally. So they wanted to take away deep shots and force the Bears to work underneath. That was the idea. And Shane, Michael, I do think that he's trying to address it. And frankly, that's where I want to see more and more people, or not more and more people. I want to see better and better execution because, Heisenberg, I don't understand what your trouble is here because this is a very good block. Like, again, so this is Brian Burns. He's going to come around the outside, best player on their line, and he's not going to touch Nick Foles before Foles makes the hit. Like, if we're complaining about that, then you're complaining in general. But so at some point, your left tackle isn't going to look like you think he is, and there's nothing I can do. You need to go watch my left tackle video on Leno because this explains what you're talking about. It's a phenomenon where fans want to take a look at their left tackle, like Riley Reif in Minnesota, like plenty of other guys. Taylor Lewan gets a lot of hate in Tennessee for being perfectly decent players. You can hit me with whatever you want, man. Charles Leno is an average to below average tackle, and he gets paid like an average to below average tackle, and I don't really want to have this discussion anymore. Anyways, the Bears' passing game was at the end of the day able to overcome this Panthers offense brick by brick, little by little. And it really wasn't any help from the run game until the fourth quarter-ish, but they were able to run little plays like this where they, again, know that the guys are going to run into some kind of cover 2, cover 4 drop, so they just victimize it with a quick linebacker that's going to, Jimmy Graham that's going to slip on over the top, make the catch, and bang, they get 8 yards, which is great. But yeah, I'm sad about Lewan too. Lewan's a good player, which it's a real bummer that he got hurt. So the Bears offense was super spotty. It was up and down. It's like a motor that starts sometimes and then it just dies. Because of the lack of a run game and the fact that the passing game is sort of intrinsically hit and miss. What I would do, so that's the question here, Luo, because I've talked a little bit about how Matt Rule started run blitzing the Bears and started having success with it because they were able to take away a lot of what the Bears wanted to do in the run game, partially because Matt Nagy was calling runs on first downs, so the Panthers just started treating every first down like they needed to make a play on the run. This is the play I was looking for. So remember, the Bears are in another 1st and 10. They want to try to make a play on against the run because the Bears want to get the run going. Rule knows this, so he's going to send this linebacker straight through the line, just under the understanding that they kind of know what the Bears are tending to do on a snap count perspective, and he just slips straight through Germain Ifedi and blows up this run. If you take a look in the back, there's not a ton that the Bears can do here because the linebacker gets there too quickly. Maybe you want Ifedi to dart over, but he's just not that quick-footed a guy. You'd need an almost elite or at least faster right guard, and Ifedi's more of a strong hitter. This is just a really, really nice defensive play call. Sometimes they call the perfect play. This is one of those examples. But so from there, in that situation, I'd love to see Matt Nagy iterate. You can call different runs, you can call more passes. I don't really care. But they definitely started to hammer guys with play calling that was snuffing out what the Bears wanted to do. And then there's one other series that I'd love to see the Bears iterate on, and it's this one right here. So this is a very different series. It's a smaller one. In this case, this is where Matt Rule, I think, also probably got the better of Matt Nagy in the middle of situations. So the clock is at, let me take a look. The clock is at 6 minutes and 19 seconds. The Panthers are down a touchdown. So that means they need to make a stop, right? So when the Bears see Allen Robinson right here with his corner in off coverage, they want him on an in route. I don't even know if Foles makes an audible, but he already knows that's where he's going to go with the ball because he sees this matchup. The trouble is that Matt Rule at this point has basically coached his corners to make a play on Allen Robinson the instant they see that in cut. This is where you want to see a guy potentially play with double moves because this corner breaks in, he gets Allen Robinson, immediately knocks down a 7-yard gain, and then after actually a pretty decent run, because again it's not a run, it's a screen. But so the Bears get their first basically successful screen of the season, just about, and so that's awfully neat as they pick up 7 quick yards. And from there, the Bears get moved into 3rd and 3. And again, Nagy at this point doesn't necessarily recognize either that or Foles doesn't recognize it. I don't know who it is. That the Panthers are going to trot out the exact same thing. Once again, they get Allen Robinson in off coverage. And so they want to send him in on a quick in route, see if they can steal those 3 yards. The Panthers again make a play on it almost exactly the same way. So once again, he doesn't sink back all that far and just darts forward, makes a play on the receiver. This is where I think personally that as we go forward, Matt Nagy needs to iterate and he needs to add in more double moves. He needs to add in other ways to use this outside pairing because at this point he's becoming a bit predictable. And I think Foles and Nagy know that and that they can iterate on it. Sometimes the defense gets the best of you in a series. But so in this case, I want to see Foles and Nagy change what they're doing a bit because if the Panthers are reading you like a book, trust me, the Rams will too. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about the throw at the end, and my personal opinion is that when you face a 3rd and 2, honestly, even if it is the end of the game with a defense as good as the Bears, remember that they've got, what is this? So I can't remember how many timeouts they have. They may only have one left. But with 1:44 on the clock, you never necessarily know what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, I don't mind any call that gets the first down. And the Bears try to make the aggressive call here, right? They try to see if they can't run a passing play to your best receiver with somebody potentially coming open on a crossing route because see, Jimmy Graham's supposed to try to set a pick for the guy that's trailing Allen Robinson. And right here, there is a throwing window and it does get to Allen Robinson and it ends up on the ground. But at the end of the day, run or pass, I don't really care. Pick up the first down. End of game situations like this, what you're going to hear from me is not, I want to run on 3rd and 2. I want to burn that timeout. Don't plan for failure. Go win the game, whatever it is. So the fact that the Bears were able to get their number 1 wide receiver against a corner that they liked and they just couldn't complete it, this is something that I'd look at less as, wow, they need to run the ball here. And personally, I just want to make the play. And right there, that's enough separation to make it. It's hard to tell whether the cornerback gets his hand in, but either way, it's one that I'd like to see fixed, whether it's a better throw by Foles, a stronger catch by Robinson, or anything else. This seems fine to me. But so somebody asked about Miller and blocking. Yeah, that's something that is a problem. Miller's not a very good blocker, but hey, it is what it is. And Jimmy Graham, it's hard to tell because I actually thought the same thing when I first saw it. So when I first saw this, I thought to myself, wait, Jimmy Graham looks really open. Exactly. I'm glad we're all talking about this because the trouble is that by the time Foles releases the ball, his linebacker is starting to run with him. So it's kind of tough to tell where he's whether he's going to stay on top of Graham or not. And then he releases the ball. And at that point, the linebacker just turns around and watches the play happen. So it's tough to tell whether he would have been open or not. It's possible, but again, at the end of the day, run or pass, just get the yards. And you haven't been running the ball well all day. I understand the call, but I'll criticize it all the same because even if a receiver's open, they didn't make the play, and that's where you want your offense to do exactly that. Then O'Donnell almost gets his punt blocked almost immediately afterwards, and from there, the Bears defense ultimately had to shoulder the load, because like right here, I think this is a special teams gaffe. Somebody comes right on through, and thank heavens O'Donnell doesn't give up a block there. That would have been really, really bad, but hey, it works. Shondell, you bring up a good point. Which receiver in the NFL blocks? I have no idea, but it sure isn't Anthony Miller. They almost get the block down, which would have been mega, mega bad, but oh well. And exactly like you're talking about, Casino, at some point these things have to, like happen, that you have to make these plays to keep calling the plays the way you do, but that's at a point where not only does the offensive line need to play better, Foles has to play better, the receivers have to play better. It's all that details stuff they talk about in the press conferences, and I don't think just changing to I formation and stuff like that's going to help anything, especially when the only way the Bears were able to move the ball was running quick passes. But yeah, there's... You asked Graham not only in the red zone. I get the impression he uses him, frankly, too much. You could make the argument that the Jimmy Graham is in way too many blocks that he doesn't necessarily need to be, and a decent example is this one right here. So it's a 2nd and 1, and the Bears are going to run a play. I need to get underneath where... They're going to have Jimmy Graham make what's called a reach block, as if this guy goes inside, which he very well may, Jimmy has to step in front and try to seal him. It's tough. But so from there, Massey has to come out there. Ifedi's going to try to seal this guy. So is Whitehair. And the whole goal of this play is that Montgomery's going to take this handoff and just run upfield, because it's 2nd and 1. They're trying to get 1 yard. Jimmy Graham, though, he doesn't make a very good block, and Bobby Massey gets held up trying to help him out because he's going to take a very vertical path to try to cut this guy off and make it easier for Graham. But Graham's block isn't particularly great, and at the end of the day, his man makes Montgomery cut back, leads him into the rest of these guys, and from there, Montgomery thankfully has the strength to push forward. Not at all, but they've got the yards. Either way, you could make the argument Graham gets used in way too many of these run blocking situations that maybe you should just use Kmet in them. But yeah, it's tough. And so I'd like to see Jimmy Graham used in the passing game more often, but maybe it's time for Cole Kmet to take over some of those run blocking routes, because goodness knows there's enough problems with Demetrius Harris at the moment. I don't even need to talk about the fact that it is almost an impossible block. It's really tough. That's the thing. Somebody mentioned this is like the play calling guy that I talked to and asked questions to talked about, like, why in the world is Jimmy Graham being asked to make that block? And that's a great question that you could run up the flagpole and legitimately criticize Nagy on. Why in a 2nd and 1 situation is Jimmy Graham the guy who's making that block? But here is Demetrius Harris didn't have a fabulous day. This play was probably one of the worst. It's the flea flicker. And I don't know if you guys noticed it, but Demetrius Harris, who's right over here, basically just stops blocking Brian Burns, who, as we've talked about, one of the best players. And it's tough because I don't know what he thought he was doing. Maybe he thinks Foles is supposed to be back here or something. I don't have any idea, but he just slows up and stops blocking him, and Burns, credit to him, closes immediately on Foles and hits him so bad. And thankfully, the Bears get a pass interference call that, if I'm totally honest with you, I thought was just as bad, or it's very ticky-tack. This, to me, at best is defensive holding because, yeah, I mean, I guess he touches him up, but it's not like a interference at the point of the catch. Either way, I'll take it because this is a pretty clean hit by Burns. I don't understand why Demetrius Harris, of all people, decided to just stop blocking, but he did, and that's how it is. But yeah, so from there, the other big play that Harris made, I'm sure you guys remember it, I know I do, is, I can't remember, is this the third quarter, or do you guys remember the one where he dropped it? It's the third quarter, isn't it? Right here, I mean, at some point, I was waiting for Demetrius Harris to get his shot so that he could make a play in the passing game. He's consistently able to Jalen Johnson is incredibly good. I have absolutely no idea because, or like whether he's the defensive rookie of the year because I don't study enough guys. But when you look at something like this, for gracious alive, Demetrius Harris has to catch this. I mean, this is like shades of Kellen Davis. The ball hits him right in the hands and he just drops it. I mean, it's the sort of thing where when Olin Kreutz says, I think Cole Kmet's about ready to start, I don't necessarily think it's a compliment. Past a certain point, it's saying the guy is definitely like pretty solid. Kmet has had a really pretty good game in this one, but his competition for tackle for tight end is just not that amazing. And yeah, Ryan Pace did build a really good defense. There's no way around it. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that kills drives, especially when you're just not that talented. One other play that I'll point out, this one's a Jimmy Graham one. So this is Foles, the dual threat quarterback, which I think is kind of hilarious. And I don't know either how Foles can keep it. So this play right here, the line holds enough for Foles to get free access to this right side. And from this moment, I just want to point something out that I think is kind of hilarious. So Foles recognizes as he rolls over, we can do the slow walk. He recognizes that he's got a ton of space for a Brady-like run, right? Especially given that he knows that he's got Jimmy Graham to step in and make a block for him, right? Right? I don't know why this happens, but Jimmy Graham just stays on the sidelines instead of at any point blocking this guy and makes Foles make an open field move to beat him and then get the first down. I don't understand why in the world Jimmy Graham, of all people, doesn't just step up and make a block for his guy, but he doesn't. And when you take a look back here, you can pretty evidently see, yeah, look at that moped scooter speed, that Foles has to break this tackle himself because Jimmy Graham doesn't get in the way of it. I don't understand why Graham doesn't at least step in and give the shoulder tag block, but instead Foles has to go forward, break direct sideways, beat the man, a phantom block by Jimmy Graham maximum, and Foles gets the yards. But yeah, this is the kind of thing where I look at it and I don't understand why some of these tight ends are making the plays that they are. Thankfully, Graham's been productive in the passing game, hyper productive in the red zone with fourth in touchdowns overall. It must be half miscommunication. Somebody talked about it like Graham being just shocked that Foles was going to run the ball, maybe. But yeah, it's controller disconnect. It's tough. I don't think the Bears necessarily need to trade for anybody. Past a certain point, your offensive personnel is what it is. That Quentin Spain signing looks awfully attractive to me because he's a pretty solid guard, and actually at about the 2-hour mark, I'm thinking we'll hop over and we'll look through some film of him. But this Bears offense all over the place. It would follow a poor play with a decent play with a good play. It marched down the field enough. Kudos to the Bears offense and what they were able to do after getting destroyed on a run play like this. They'd follow it up with 2nd and 11. I think this might be, I'm just going to be quiet. We'll watch the play because once I see it, I'll remember what it is. It might just be a quick out, for instance. Okay, this is a good one. This is a play that I'm really happy to see because Foles is basically able to recognize quick pressure and make a play at this moment. So they're going to run what is called an overload blitz as they send one extra guy, and it unfortunately, based on the protection call, which look, I don't know if it's wrong, but the Whitehair had set the protection around this guy as the Mike linebacker. So that means that these two are left to defend 3 guys on this right-hand side, and that's too many guys. So they take the inside threats and let this guy curl around. Foles recognizes it right there and just squeaks the throw out to Allen Robinson and then takes a big shot right there at the end. Foles got hit a lot. But so from there, Robinson makes a really nice juke and turns a loss of a yard into, believe it or not, 6 full yards. Really, really solid in terms of what they were able to do. It obviously, you're not going to call this a good play, but making the best out of a poor situation, sure. And that's pretty solid. So from there, what is this? So then they go to 3rd and 5. Remember, nasty running play, decent play, making something out of nothing, 3rd and 5. And then they move on to this, where Foles is at some of his best when he's on these 3rd downs. From there, it's Cordero Patterson making a really nice play in one-on-one coverage that I don't think the guy was expecting, because here he is in inside leverage, but Cordero just outmuscles him, makes a solid move, Foles delivers the ball, and they move the chains. It's interesting because while I would love to just say this Bears offense was putrid, it did do a lot of things right, despite an entire phase of the game, running in this case, not working at all for the first 3 full quarters. It's kind of weird because there's a lot that these Bears could iterate on, especially when teams stop playing them with just all quarters and basically denying the deep passes that they ultimately do want to get to. This, by the way, was a pretty solid run just on the way. And yeah, if Foles gets hurt, I would love to give him my collarbone. And so the Bears offensive line here does a decent job. Cody Whitehair. Oh, actually, this is interesting because this is one of my favorite plays that I've seen of Montgomery basically ever. It's so on this play, what you're going to see, and let's see if I can diagram it. Of course, the play has to start first. You're about to see David Montgomery set Cody Whitehair up perfectly. Right there, this guy has inside leverage on the hole that Montgomery wants to hit. So what Montgomery's going to do is he's going to feint inside, and when he does that, it forces 95 to rip over Montgomery. But Montgomery is just throwing a feint. From there, he peels back, Cody Whitehair regains leverage, and Montgomery is able to rush outside and find a hole for a solid 5 yards. Believe it or not, this is really good. This is a great job by a running back of setting his blockers up and making sure they're in the best position to succeed possible. And the Bears are able to make a play off of it and get 5 yards in the running game, which is pretty solid. Yeah, it's really good. And at this point, the Bears kind of start finding some ground in the running game, which I'm not about to freak out about because this group right here, this Panthers defense, they are 29th in run stopping. So running on them is considered normal, not considered an accomplishment. But even so, the Bears, even the fact that they put some running like plays on the board that were decent is, I'm not going to say a sign of encouragement, but it's better than them not getting anything. I'm not thinking we're going to run well against either the Rams or the Saints. Both are good run-stuffing fronts. But like you're saying, Sam, that's the difference between Monty and Patterson, and who knows, maybe in a couple weeks they can actually work something out. On this play, I think if I saw it correctly, Whitehair gets absolutely mugged. He gets torn right through by 95, but Foles is able to distribute the ball to Jimmy Graham in a quick and effective way, and boom. And yeah, exactly, Zach. I mean, between COVID and I guess let's call it snacks upgrading to full meal Harrison, he seems like he may not have been the solution that we thought he was going to be for the Seahawks anyways, but we'll see. So from there, Foles makes the play that we talked about with Mooney. They move into the red zone. They get their best run of the day, which I think might just be set up by Whitehair, and it's just a nice outside zone run. Let's take a look under the hood. So believe it or not, everybody chips in. Graham gets a decent slice block. Coward hooks up his guy. Leno's got the inside positioning. And from there, Montgomery makes a play, plows through contact, and is able to continue running forward to get all the way to the red zone. This is solid. Like, this is the kind of thing that you look at and you say, hey, you know what? Maybe the Bears could muster up not a consistent run game, but enough of a running threat not to be entirely one-dimensional. And from there, they end up punching it in. I think it takes a couple plays. And if this isn't an example right here, by the way, of how heavy sets do not necessarily guarantee production, I don't know what is. Because when they run the heavy set, the Bears get stuffed for a loss of yards. When they run the shotgun set, which I'm not pro shotgun here. I'm just pointing out, like, hey, it's all about spreading out the defense and making a play from there. The Bears gain a little bit of ground, so neither run is good. But from there, and yeah, Zach, we're going to talk about that guard from the Bills because I do think it's worth knowing. He may very well be a Bear here pretty darn soon. And then at this moment, I think they run the QB sneak. Foles plows it in because, of course, he is a dynamic running threat, as we all know, right? And at that point, It's the hooray, Bears touchdown, and they go up 2 scores, which credit to the offense. This is like a 50-yard drive, which is solid. I have no idea, by the way, whether Lamar Miller is going to ultimately make a big difference as a running back. If we were getting the Lamar Miller from 4 years ago, maybe, but similar to a whole lot of backs, I'll use Matt Forte as an example. Matt Forte on the Jets was just not the same player that he was on the Bears, and that is different. I mean, I hope that Lamar Miller still has juice in the legs because the Bears could use a speed back that could get to the outside, but we'll have to see if Lamar Miller's it. I really don't know. Either way, they ought to keep looking at undrafted free agent running backs, probably not this season, but especially next season, to see if they can find an outside zone runner. But yeah, so I don't think they wanted to run behind Coward, Sam. One thing I will say that is it's unironically huge, and everybody just go ahead and start tapping your knocking on wood now, because I do have to talk about it. It is a different kind of football game when you're able to make kicks from the 50, the 55. I love Tariq Cohen, talking about 29. But so, and honestly, I'm not 100% sure, Sam. Maybe Artavius Pierce is that guy, but Tariq Cohen is dangerous. It's a huge problem that we it's a huge problem that we lost him, because I think he would make some serious plays here. But so, okay, Lamar is 29. That's good to know. But so, yeah, I'm going to just stop talking about kicking, because last thing I want to do is to screw anything up. But what I will say is, again, this was a great example of how the Bears basically kept kind of just, I wouldn't say lucking into things, but they did just enough for they did just enough to get themselves into position to have to make a really big play to ultimately get what they wanted. Because sitting right here, they pick up this illegal hands to the face that I've watched a couple times. This was a pretty bad call, honestly, and the Bears get a little more yards out of it than the hands to the face, but they stop the clock. Apparently they wanted to keep first down, because I know they didn't decline the penalty. So from there, the Bears move up, and they mess up 2 plays. So they're sitting here probably right at the window of field goal range. Like, you don't want to kick it at 55 yards. And then I think this is a play where Leno does get wrecked. I'm going entirely off of memory, so yeah, Burns beats him. And both he and Massey give up a massive hit. I don't think Foles should have been throwing this to Mooney either way, just to call it like it is, because this is a cover 2 set. You're not going to get your receiver open down the field, but Foles apparently just decides YOLO and lets this ball go either way. Nobody was really open, and thank heavens. I mean, you could just about, to call it out like it is, make a defensive back highlight reel off of what Darnell Mooney has done. He's made some serious plays just keeping balls out of defenders' hands. So from there, again, the Bears are just looking for quick yardage. They've got 11 seconds on the clock, so you get one quick play and you're trying to kick the ball out. And at this point, the Bears mess up a throw to the sidelines that I don't think it's ever open, so I think Foles just throws it overhead, but I'd have to go back and look at it. Either way, I know if you're like I was on if you're like I was when watching this game, I thought, well, dadgummit, we were so close to getting some yardage. I guess we're just going to miss our kick from 55 yards, and then, oh boy, this was something magical. Like, as silly as it sounds, being able to see a kick go through from this distance was super cool. And I'll take you back to one of the more recent, big kicking moments that I can think of was Greg Zerloin when he hit a 48-yarder and then a 57-yarder, one to tie and the next one to go to the 2018 Super Bowl. Kickers that can make big kicks in big moments can make a big difference. And yeah, it was only 53 yards either way. It was a really, really long bomb. See, it's 55. It's labeled right here. But so either way, it's, you say that, Ada, but a kicker shouldn't be a big feature unless you're playing a defensive team in which every single point counts. Remember, Carolina was basically only able to generate field goals consistently. So from them, and we're going to get there, Michael, don't worry about it. From there, the Bears were able to answer with field goals of their own. Some when they drove well deep into territory and just didn't get the plays. Like, for instance, as upset as I was when Rashad Coward mucked this up. So he is, remember, this is him getting blasted, and then Montgomery takes it down in the backfield. This is when Foles throws the ball a little late to Allen Robinson, and he gets interfered with. So if they give the Bears the ball here, they might very well get a touchdown. Instead, they get a field goal, and that's okay, but there were some things that broke against the Bears in that direction. The Bears were able to just consistently trade field goals with the Panthers, though, and frankly, one of their biggest drives might have been this one at the end, where the Panthers just scored a touchdown, and from there, I'm not looking to mention any name, but so at this moment, the Bears, they just had given up a touchdown and they needed an answer. It's 20-13, I think. And credit to the Bears, they're able to drive right on down the field, starting at their own 20 and answer with a field goal. You know, on most teams, this isn't good. But this is the Chicago Bears. And it's not that the bar gets lowered. It's that the goal is a little different. You're playing with or without very much run support, and ultimately they do kind of screw up at the end if memory serves. But they're able to consistently make these little quick passes, keep driving down the field. Now they've picked up 20 yards. And let me see. I have no idea. Or I think, Sam, that there's something to that. The Bears never went 3 and out until the very end of the game. So if you wanted to make the case that the Bears offense has taken up more time and kept the defense fresher, I think that the argument is there to be made. It's totally a judgment call and based on how you want to say it, but the Bears haven't taken all that many 3 and outs since Foles took over. Here's a really nice pair of blocks, by the way, from Cody Whitehair, who takes that guy. David Montgomery makes another nice play. Like, I just want to argue with this. No, Zach, I understand talking special teams is weird, but so from here, Montgomery once again bakes the guy inside and then bounces right back outside, which helps out Cody Whitehair as Jermaine Ifedi and Bobby Massey hold their blocks and Montgomery gets right outside. I'd love to see more of this. I think that there's something to be said for outside running being pertinent to this Bears team because their tackles, namely Massey, are better blockers than, say, Rashad Coward is, but either way, that was a really nice couple pairs of running plays, and like you're saying, Ray, Mooney makes a really nice block too, which is awesome. Somebody mentioned while we're watching a couple plays that didn't work because this Bears offense does tend to blow plays here and there. The Matt Ryan thing is always really interesting because I think that there's something to be said for Matt Ryan being an addition to the Bears, but I also won't be shocked if just due to contract situations and everything else involved in bringing a quarterback in, he has to learn the offense, he has to change the locker room, so on and so forth. I won't be surprised if anything, that's all happen in the off season. It won't happen in the in season. Again, this is one of those moments where just calling it like it is. Madden can tend to make us think that, you know, you could just add a quarterback, throw him into the offense and he'll know it. Jimmy G, if you remember, in a midseason trade took, 7 weeks to learn the offense, and it takes too long. But yeah, Fitzmagic would be fun. I just don't know if he'd ultimately be any better than Nick Foles. And that's not even because I think Nick Foles is like incredible or something like that. He tends to just do his job. But for instance, I mean, this is the kind of play that I look at, and big kudos to what Foles is able to do. And this is frankly a good play by Matt play call by Matt Nagy. Losing my words over here. This is what happens 2 hours into the stream. So the Bears recognize that they're going to drop into cover 2, but somehow Foles must catch that this guy sinks way too far back because Allen Robinson cuts underneath and beats his guy, and he should be able, in theory, to this guy could make a break on the ball, but as soon as he sees this guy turn his hips off of Robinson's vertical route, he lets it go, takes a big hit in in the process, and Robinson runs it up to the 26-yard line off of a nice little run after catch. This is one of those plays where I look at, and again, I just want Foles to stay healthy, but these are the plays where like he takes a big hit, and he took quite a few of them. The throw's nice, the receiver's open. When people say that you want Nick Foles to hit the layups, this is what they're talking about, because that's a really nice play, and it not only moves the chains off of third and what felt like forever, but it puts the Bears in the red zone all of a sudden. This is where I will tell you that I do think the Bears got desperate. So not only does this run play go very badly, like very, very, very badly, but and I can't remember exactly why, but then they call one of the weirdest calls that I've seen them call. So they run what looks like another run blitz as Coward passes this guy off to nobody, and I have no idea what the assignment is. That's going to sound like it's Coward criticism. I really don't know, because I don't live in their playbook, but from there, which surprise that, or at this point, I think I've talked about all of my surprises, but so at this moment, the Bears call this rinky dink, like Robinson. This is the one y'all wanted to talk about. Robinson's in the backfield. I have no idea what this is. I don't know. Whatever the Bears try to do, getting Robinson into the flat, it's obvious. And I think that they didn't anticipate having Burns just blow the play up. So Foles throws it away and he still gets hit. Like he still gets hit. The idea, I think, is to draw the whole defense away with some outside zone faking play action. But as you can see, Burns doesn't fall for it. He just sits around and waits, maybe because Robinson's coming this way. Either way, he does something they clearly don't expect, because if he's not there, and frankly, if Foles had a little more time, I actually think you would have seen Jimmy Graham open for just like a little bit of yardage, but he doesn't see it, primarily because Burns is in his face, and he just lets the ball go and gets thumped anyways. Yeah, that's the thing. Matt Nagy got desperate in this setting. I don't know what they thought this play call was going to be. I wish somebody had asked him about it, because I don't know what was even supposed to happen here. It just looked so bad. And Zach, they're talking about Quentin Spain. But so at this point, yeah, the O-line is run blocking because they're running play action. That's sort of the idea anyways. It's just that they go sell the fake and Foles gets the ball out quickly. From there, I think let's take a look. This might be Leno. Yeah, they get hit on the goal line. They don't get anything. Yeah, Leno gets beat by Burns there. That's just clean. Not what you want to see. Throw doesn't get out to Montgomery, who's only kind of open, probably wouldn't have picked it up. But either way, the point on this offensive drive isn't to somehow say that, like, wow, hey, the offensive line is horrible. It's more to, they're not good. I'm going to try to end this on a super negative note. It's more to say that the Bears started at their 25, drove it all the way down to the 13, and kicked a field goal to put the score back to a 10-point lead. At that point, I think it was 23-13. That's all this Bears offense is supposed to do. The touchdown is extra credit. And, of course, against some other teams that are higher scoring, like the Packers, we're going to want to see touchdowns where we can. But against somebody like the Panthers that wasn't able to answer the defense, the guidelines of the offense change. As long as they can get down the field with some consistency, they're ultimately doing what we need them to do, which is great. But yeah, it's nice. The offense left a lot to iterate on. It left a lot of hit and miss and miss and hit and miss, but they put 23 points on the board, and they did so primarily through to execution. And if you take a look at the tail of the tape, you end up seeing that they had, I'm going off of memory, but I think they had 5 drives of over 30 yards. They went 3 and out one time, and it's right here at the end off of that 3rd and 2 play where they tried to gamble with with the pass call, didn't get it. But at that point, the Bears defense is as fresh as they're going to be. They ultimately make a play and everything works out. It's a game where a lot of people are going to be mega negative, and I think it left a lot to build on for the Rams game. So from there, I do want to walk us through a little bit of this guy, Quentin Spain, because with him being where he is, like, I think, oh boy, I would love to, or I really don't understand why they wouldn't why they wouldn't get Spain into the building, because at this point he costs nothing like to go and grab. He is as free of an acquisition as you could get at left guard, no less, and it just makes a whole lot of sense. Now, I have to make it clear that what you're going to get from Spain is not what you would... It's not what you might expect, because he's a slow-moving lineman that isn't near as good in the running game as I would anticipate him to be. I was expecting when I first saw this guy for him to be much more like Ifedi, and on this play he doesn't really have an assignment. But what you're basically going to see, because this is some tape that I watched earlier today, that Spain, who, again, he's 67 right here, he gets beat in the run game right there, and you're going to see a good bit of that. I'll wind it back because I feel like I'm going a little too fast. 67, he's not near as good in the run game as he is in the past game. But so right there, he gets ripped away from, and his guy's able to make the play. And from then, it is 2nd and 8. I think the Bills go pass play here. I'm just, at this point, I am just trying to see if we can't get through some plays. And then, yeah, so then he goes into pass reps, and I really like what he's doing in the passing game. And Miami's not an incredible offensive line, don't get me wrong. It's not like, or defensive line. It's not as if they've got some threats that I'm just extraordinary about. But at this moment, what is it? I'm perfectly fine with getting Spain in over what we've got in somebody like Coward or Bars, because at least on all the passing plays that I've seen from him, he was able to deliver some really solid reps. And as a team that is, see, that one's right there, really solid. He picks up a stunt really pretty nicely. So right here, you're going to see him, again, 67 right here. He's going to get his hands into his guy, push him off, pick up the stunt, push on him too. So he throws him off there, collects the stunt, and this is pretty standard. Spain isn't even on waivers. He's just signable at this point. And so from that, I'll show one more drive just so you guys can get a look at some tape of this guy. But he continues to struggle in the run game, if memory serves. Again, it's 67 right here, and he gets ripped away from, and his guy makes the play. And so then we go to the passing set, and there he is, rock solid. You see a lot of this. And for a team, exactly, his weakness is our weakness, Shondell, but another good way to put it is his strength is our strength, because right there he takes care of his guy, probably gets away with a little bit of a hold outside of the end zone. But even so, if the Bears want to pass the ball, he's a much better interior pass protector than Rashad Coward or Alex Barzin, and he's strong in doing that. But so I don't know if we necessarily need running back help, primarily because we've got Lamar Miller, who I don't necessarily think is like the cavalry or something like that, but it's tough to it's tough at this point to suggest that the Bears are going to find like great running backs, because in the middle of a COVID season of all things, it's just hard to get help without trying to trade for it, or signing like. We could have potentially signed Le'Veon Bell. We kind of just would have been double dipping on a David Montgomery style back, and that's okay. It's tough. So people are suggesting running backs. It's not really important. But Spain here would be a legitimate ad. That's why I'm going through this film. Remember, I didn't cover Le'Veon Bell for a reason. I didn't necessarily think that we were going to... I didn't really necessarily think we needed any help there, but I watched this guy's pass sets, and they're pretty solid. Again, take a look here. He doesn't give almost any ground. This is exactly the kind of alignment that the Bears could use, because he does anything well. And at the moment, from what I've seen, Rashad Coward doesn't really do anything well. So, it's something that I think this is a no-brainer. I mean, there's a reason, if you know him at all. One of my favorite follows on Twitter, really good friend, Brad, who's now at Pro Football Focus, used to be Brad OTC. There's a reason he's all in on potentially like using the Spain signing, because this is a need at left guard. And as you see here, he turns his guy. Allen runs right on forward. I don't even know if it was a quarterback draw or not, but he's just consistently executing at a level that is well above what we've got at our left guard spot. It's an upgraded offensive line, and y'all, there's not 32 good offensive lines in the NFL. So the fact that there's a solid, even if he's just okay or good in the passing game, poor in the running game, that's better than poor in the passing game and poor in the running game. And yeah, exactly, Zach. That's the problem. Is it's like, what are we gonna do? Ride or die with the guys we have? David, it's tough to tell if the Bears are interested in Spain or not, because obviously we can't read Pace's mind, but it's I would hope that they are. Not only does he have a connection slightly to the Bills because Castillo comes from the Bills org, though I don't know how much that matters at this point, but I know he was a free agent in the offseason. Even so, the Bears just lost a starter for the year. And that's something that you just can't wallpaper over, especially on an offensive line that is depleted as is and is pretty thin, because our depth at offensive line is just not really particularly great. But at this point, like you guys are all seeing and saying, I think you're seeing it like I am, Spain is an ad that unquestionably helps. Exactly like you're saying. You could even make the argument, Assassinated Ape, that the Bears, or that James Daniels was the Bears' best offensive lineman, especially as Cody Whitehair seems to be taking a step back. It's a problem. And I know, David, that you're looking for Lamar Miller. You got to remember that Lamar Miller is probably not going to be the guy that he was. I'd be surprised if he was anyways. But yeah, Daniels is either 1 or 2. And Spain may cost something. You say we don't have money left, Zach, but this is the kind of guy that I might consider to just push a little bit of money out from somebody so that you can make room for a signing that is, again, you're 5-1. This is the moment where when you get an ad that doesn't cost any draft capital, it just costs money, I think you take it, and I don't think you ask too many questions about it as you do. This feels like an ad that makes a lot of sense to me, because even if you hold on to him, now you've got some really good depth at offensive line. Potentially you kick him over to right guard to fill for Ifedi at the end of next season, because remember, Ifedi's on a 1-year deal. But even so, it gives this guy a shot who he was only released because he wasn't happy with his role at the time. This is the kind of guy that, I'll say it one last time, you guys have heard me say it, and then we can talk about something else. He's unquestionably helpful on the Bears offensive line, and with the Bears offensive line situation where they are, I think this is a move that it doesn't make any sense for me to see Pace not cash in on this kind of thing. It's too sensible. It's very reminiscent of Josh Sitton. But yeah, there must be something weird going on. The Bills people that I've talked to say that they liked a guy better inside the organization. At this point, you've generally got the idea of who he is. He's kind of slow-footed. In the run game, he's not amazing, but he is a decent football player. And at the end, it's tough to tell whether Bars was that bad, but he got destroyed by Vita Vea, like really, really destroyed. And I don't see why you wouldn't upgrade the offensive line in a very similar way to what the Bears did with Josh Sitton way back in the day. Riley Ridley, what's tough, everybody likes to play this game where they think they know more than the coaches. These guys evaluate these people in practice every single day. Generally speaking, when the better player is playing better, they play the better player. And Riley Ridley didn't exactly show me anything last year that made me go, wow, he's outstanding. And yeah, I mean, Miller is incredibly inconsistent, and I'm not particularly happy with his play. But what I will say, going back to the Bears, because this is a Bears show, the big play to Miller's name was really, the more that I've watched it, you're not going to believe me when I say this, I don't really think it was Miller's fault. So the Bears practice every week. But yeah, like you guys are kind of getting at some point you ask the question, why in the world isn't Riley Ridley getting on the field? And I don't think it's his problem. But so here's the deal. What the Bears are about to do, this is 3rd and 3. This is the one where Miller backs off the line. So the Bears roll this guy over here, Allen Robinson, and they get what looks like a tight package of quarters. So they think they're going to get quarters, and the Bears are running mesh, right? So they're going to basically, I can't remember what he's going to do, but Miller's going to come over here. I think Graham's going to go back over that way. This is one of Foles' favorite play calls. So they run it, and they don't drop into cover 4. They drop 8, as it's called. So there's just 3 rushers right here, here, and there. Let's see if we can't change the color, get like a red. Yeah. So They're just rushing 3. Foles technically has time, but they've got a whole bunch of guys sitting, waiting for the crossing routes, which is a huge problem because as soon as they do this, Foles knows there's just not a whole lot open. So he's reading the defense going from here to here. And that means that I don't know if he's going to see Trey Boston sitting underneath, but either way, Foles makes what he thinks is the best decision he can and goes to Miller. Miller catches it, steps backwards, and gives up the first down. So it's Miller's fault, right? Here's the trouble. I've watched this plays a couple times, and when I watch this play, with Trey Boston sitting where he is, I don't think he did anything wrong. When I slow this down, and I hate to criticize a guy for it, why is Foles stepping to his right to throw this ball? And when he does, why is he putting it out there? With Trey Boston sitting where he is, you probably want this ball over here, maybe even just in his chest, so that he can catch it and fall backwards. It's not like an easy play, but hey, at least he's on the third down yard line and you pick up the yards. Where Miller is sitting, the instinct with an on-breaking defender is to protect the ball and bounce in whatever direction you can. So yeah, maybe you could say he didn't spin, but he plants, he tries to get around him, Boston makes a nice tackle, and it's not good. Don't get me wrong. Again, I'm not trying to sit here and say like, hey, Miller couldn't have made this play. It's not possible. But I am going to say it's understandable. Foles basically mucks up his footwork for, again, no real reason. Like, he's got the ability to stand, and instead he just takes a step right and throws a jump pass, and it's a little too far out for Miller to catch and take a hit on. Like, what's the other option? Take the hit and get annihilated with his hands out? It's not realistic to ask of a football player because there are plenty of balls to get annihilated on, but getting annihilated with your hands extended is a great way to not catch the pass. I'm not saying this is somehow a good play. I'm saying that it's a play where a lot goes wrong. Foles could have put this ball in a different spot. Again, I'm not 100% certain he saw Trey Boston, but it's something that you would hope that they would clean up. Again, like you're saying, it's a potential hospital pass, and Miller avoids going to the hospital at the cost of the third down. I would point this out to just say, you probably want this ball to go onto his. You probably want this ball on Miller's, like in between the numbers, on his 17 or on his back shoulder, so he can catch it and just fall forward, which is fine. All right, Heisenberg, never mind. So at this point, what other questions do y'all have? Because I'm an open book. We're sitting here at 2 hours, 14 minutes. We'll probably go just like a little longer, but I'm totally happy to answer whatever questions, whether it's film related or just postulation. Happy to talk about the Bears. So what y'all got? But yeah, exactly. So this whole offense is inconsistent. It's something that's got to improve. The Rams isn't the team to do it against. They're a good defense with a good front, and we've got Rashad Coward going up against Aaron Donald. It's not going to be pretty, guys, but the hope would be that, very similar to the Tampa Bay game, Foles can continue to distribute the football and just get it out to shorter routes, which is fine for me. If the Bears are able to generate, I'm talking a low score, guys, like 16 points, they may win the game. This is a really weird game when the Bears play the Rams. And over the last 2 years, they've combined in 2 football games 4 points. And so at this point, I am just expecting another slug match. Jared Goff seems to hate playing the Chicago Bears, so if the Rams do move the ball, I will be surprised because Jared Goff's fundamentally the same quarterback. The Bears' coverage staff is really good. Their pass rush is enough to make motions, and yeah, I mean, it's one where I don't think the Bears' offense has to do a ton. They just need to not turn the ball over and get some points. It's the old school Bears formula. But yeah, so at this point, somebody talked to it. Yeah, Sam, you talked about details that just aren't there. You're 100% right. My biggest critique of Nagy isn't the plays that he calls. It's the execution of those plays. I like a lot of his play calls. I think his play designs can be really creative. Sometimes they just flat out don't work, like the 2nd and 10 that we saw a little while ago. But it's the execution that I need to see things do better in, because that is something that eventually, after 2.5 years, it bubbles up to a head coach. He's got, 10 more games to prove it to me that he can at least get an offense that, don't get me wrong, I don't think this offense is crazy talented the more that I look at it. Certainly the offensive line had a terrible day against a pretty bad defensive line. but they could still execute better than they are. There's still too many moments like when Harris just sort of lets go of his block on the flea flicker that I say, guys, what are you doing? A timeout to save a delay of game that then leads back into a delay of game? You've got to be kidding me. There was tons of this stuff that you could say, Matt Nagy, the game management just isn't good enough. And I'd say all of that before I get to the play calling, because the play calling took a one-dimensional offense and ultimately pounded out 23 points, which you could do worse. But in the age of scoring, you do want it to get better. But so, yes, Elon, one thing that I did want to talk about. So I've been working with one of the guys in the chat. If y'all as a matter of fact, we do have one. We started a Discord recently, which should be really cool. If y'all like having these kinds of conversations, they'll keep going there. I'll pop in when I can. You know I'm on Twitter and making as many videos as possible, but the invite link should be in the chat here at some point. Feel free to jump in there and you can talk at any point. But so... And going back to what you're talking about, Sam, if the line takes care of business a little better, I think the offense absolutely gets better. If the receivers are in the spots that they need to be in, the offense gets better. I mean, there's tons of this stuff. I've said this since the Bears got Foles, and you saw my video on it. If you haven't, you should. That Foles video is one of the things I'm most proud of. It's in the 2020 offseason, but Foles is, in my opinion, an offensive mirror. He's going to show you where your problems are. When he throws to Demetrius Harris, the throw's good enough to catch. He just didn't catch it. The offensive line, every time you see Foles hit, you're well aware that there's pressure. He makes problems on offenses obvious, and the Bears are getting some production out of him. They're able to move the ball, and sure, he's making mistakes. He's not the greatest player, he's certainly not a great quarterback, but he's a good enough quarterback to get the job done. And so I'm hoping that if the execution gets better, that the fiery passion that both Nagy and Foles have now shown about these details manifests itself in something, and the Bears offense looks cohesive. We'll see. Ryder, you talk about it, like, if this offensive line continues the way that it does, it'll be a big problem. Like, you can't just wave your magic wand and fix that, which is part of why I think that the Bears ought to add Spain. He's too good of a personnel add compared to what the Bears have at left guard not to give a shot at, and I don't say that about everybody. I know it's a very common Bears fan thing to say, Le'Veon Bell, what if we add him? This guy, what if we add him? What if we trade for Matt Ryan? What if we do this? And nothing's wrong with any of y'all that have said that. There's something to be said for being excited, but personnel adds, especially trades, it's hard to win them, especially at this point in the season. But Spain is available for just money. I mean, this is a very reasonable addition to a point in the game, the passing game, that really could use a boost. Because like you guys are saying, if Foles is ultimately able to stay standing up, I think the Bears will be able to make some plays. One of the biggest problems that I'm seeing at the moment is that Nick Foles gets hit just about every time the Bears try to develop a downfield concept, even though they're able to get those downfield concepts open. And the pressure's coming from everywhere. Jermaine Ifedi will miss a block. Cody Whitehair will miss a block. Charles Leno will miss a block. Pretty much the only guy I haven't seen do bad things on the offensive line is Bobby Massey, which is A-okay. Michael, I think the biggest issue with this guard and tackle issue is that they're trying to build the line from inside to out. That's the Saints strategy. It's where I think Pace got the idea, and tackles are hard to get. You basically have to draft them in the first round. I would love to see a tackle drafted in the first round. Leno has no dead money on his contract. He's a great candidate for potential replacement, and if you don't get a tackle that you like, or they can play left tackle, at least maybe you can get somebody that can play right tackle, which is a little easier to acquire, and the Bears can get youth in that offensive line at a tackle position. Even so, I think that that's a conversation for a later day, because we don't even know where the Bears would be drafting, and if the season ended today, they'd be drafting pretty low. So we'll have to talk about that. But yeah, I think an offensive tackle in the first round is totally, like, it's a great idea. But yeah, Michael, the hits really do come from everywhere. Anyways, this Rams D it's all over the place. It's trouble to look at because DVOA has them. We can take a look at that now. I gotta tell you guys, multitasking and typing is just not something I'm good at. But so At this point, when you look at defenses, believe it or not, the Rams are, oh man, last time I looked at this, they were at like 23rd, and they have shot up. So they're about where I expected them to be. They're pretty good in the pass game, a little better than Carolina was, and Carolina's a really, really well-coached team. So massive kudos to them. But so their running block, or their run defense isn't that great. I'm not surprised, but it's not like that helps the Bears. It really is usually about what they can do in the passing game. And when you look at this game, all I can think of is that Anthony Miller specifically, like Darnell Mooney, but probably Anthony Miller, are going to need to be the guys who make plays against the Rams, because Jalen Ramsey should be able to take Allen Robinson away. I love Allen Robinson. I think he's a good player, but Jalen Ramsey's better, and that's A-okay. But so with that in mind, it's going to come down to what Jimmy Graham, believe it or not, and Anthony Miller can do against the rest of the Rams secondary, while Nick Foles goes up with an offensive line against a Rams front featuring a really angry Leonard Floyd and Aaron Donald. The Rams have some pieces. They have a lot to like on that front seven, but it's really just going to be about what the people not named Allen Robinson can do while attacking the rest of the Rams secondary. And as we saw in Tampa Bay, they don't need to over succeed. They don't need to over plan. They just need to score 14 to 21 points. Do that and take your chances. So we'll have to see what the Nagy offense does. Hopefully something. You say that, Herney, but Floyd's out for blood from everything that I've seen. He's having a really, really nice season. But yeah, I mean, especially coming up against the Bears, you better believe he's going to want to show something to the team that drafted him and then let him go. I would love to see the Bears win this game. The bright side is that they don't have to. They're 5-1. They took care of business against the Buccaneers, which is unexpected, and the Panthers in back-to-back weeks, there's something to be said for that. And that means that if they do go to LA and they lose, okay. They really just, with LA, New Orleans, and Tennessee, they just need to win one of these games. And I think the Rams is plenty winnable. As we saw against the 49ers, there is room to beat these guys. But let's see, just taking a look at the chat real fast. Floyd's gotten a couple of nice sacks here and there. It's not like he suddenly changed and became amazing. He's just going to be motivated, is really all I'm trying to say. But yeah, I'll take Quinn. The point is that Saints is beatable, Rams is beatable. Floyd didn't show anything in Chicago. It certainly didn't feel that way. But in an LA uniform, he's gotten a good couple sacks. He's making plays as best he can as whatever package he is. He's still not a great power rusher. Don't let me scare you too much. It really is Aaron Donald that's the big problem here. But the Bears just have to kind of find a way, and I think that there's a shot that they can do that because Jared Goff, like we've kind of seen, I don't mean to be too rude to the guy, but he kind of folds up in prime time, and Khalil Mack's his least favorite player to play against in the league. He's put that on the record. Like, this is a great moment for the Bears defense to prove themselves on a national stage that they're just as good as we saw them against Carolina. It's really great. And like you're saying, Michael, any given Sunday. And past a certain point, you got to think that 5-1 will even itself out a little bit. I think this team is closer to a 10-6, 11-5 season than they are a 13-3. I think that's okay to say. A lot of it's going to depend on who the Packers are and whether we can split the series against them, even potentially win. But yeah, the exactly like you're talking about with Goff. What I will say about him is that when he's not pressured, he's incredibly accurate. He struggles to read defenses, sure, but if you give him a tiny window, Goff can make your offense look really good. The trouble is that, as you guys have seen, this means that when he is pressured, he drops from up here, which might be one of the best throwers of the football in the league, to way down here. He drops in a hurry, and the Bears have a tendency to drop him like that with heavy pressure from Akeem Hicks, Khalil Mack. I mean, we were even able to hold Jared Goff to not very much when we didn't even have Mack. Now we've got Mack, Quinn, and Hicks, and Mario Edwards, frankly, and we should be able to make some plays on him. Really, it all comes back down to what the Bears are able to do, like what they're able to just squeeze out on offense, because they don't need a ton, but they probably need something. Heisenberg, what are you talking about? I said, so to be clear, when I say thrower of the football, I'm talking about when Jared Goff sees his man and has a very small window to hit him, he's been really good at hitting it. It's part of why he and Sean McVay have worked so well together. If he's throwing into triple coverage to, at the time it was Todd Gurley or Robert Woods or plenty of their other weapons, he's able to fit the ball into a tight window. It's part of why he's been able to amass the insane yardage totals that he has over time. Jalen Johnson, I think he'll do pretty good. Honestly, I really have no issues with Jalen at any point. He's quickly become one of the best press man players in the NFL, and I have no issue saying that. It's a couple of the other things that he gets beat like a rookie does. So I'm not going to worry about Jalen, because the only guy I've currently seen really make Jalen Johnson look bad, there's two of them, were Calvin Ridley and Mike Evans. And the Rams don't have anybody on that absolutely insane level. It's those truly elite receivers like the Evans types who are just physical as well as good route runners, and the Ridley types who are some of the best route runners and speedsters in the league that are going to give Jalen Johnson his rookie warts. Robert Woods and the rest of the Rams weapons, I don't know. I don't think they've got it in them. It's going to be a big test for Buster Skrine, because I know Cooper Kupp likes to work out of the slot a lot, but my hope would be that Eddie Jackson should personally have him bracketed for pretty much the entire game. So Dustin, that's going to be a great question. I think that there's going to be a whole lot of stuff all over the place. I think Woods is a solid player. People get really tied up in whether he's overrated or underrated, but he's a solid number 2 receiver that has really good chemistry with Jared Goff, and kudos to them. They tend to work pretty well together. I think that he's able to be covered, and again, I think the Rams are going to do their usual thing that they do against the Bears. They're going to have some pretty solid drives that end in the red zone, and I don't know if they get into the end zone. This really is... So I've said this a couple of times. You guys heard me say this against Tampa Bay. You guys heard me say this against the Colts. This Bears defense is built to be just good enough at stopping the run that it gets pass-heavy play callers to go back to passing the ball, and ultimately that's where they want to victimize people. In my opinion, this game comes down to whether or not the Rams stick with the run even when Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks blow up individual plays. I think the Rams' running game is their best weapon here against this Chicago Bears secondary and defense as a whole. And so if the Bears aren't able to plug that run, which I honestly don't know if they're going to be able to do so consistently, then they're going to be able to then they're going to be able to generate offense, get to play action, and any defense struggles against play action, especially if the running threat is real. You can make play action work whether you have a real running threat or not. But if it is a real running threat, a lot of times it will completely neuter the pass rush, and that's kind of the point, because they'll go after the run, and then your quarterback can just sit back, find somebody, and throw it. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm weirdly positive about our offense. I'm not trying to sit here and say, hey, I think our offense is going to roll out and score 55 points. What I'm saying is that our offense against a very good Buccaneers defense doubled the Packers' output. And then they went out against Carolina, and on a bad day, I think we've agreed, like it's very inconsistent at best, maybe bad at worst day, they still scored 23 points. So is this Bears offense going to score 17 points? My money would say yes, because they've been able to do so far. And who knows? I could be totally wrong. Aaron Donald could ruin the game by himself, and I could end up looking silly for saying that. I hope not. But if the offense plays like they have, maybe a little better after a little bit of time, it won't surprise me if they're able to, again, score 17, 21 points. And in Bears-Rams games, that's enough, because I think over the last 2 seasons, the Rams scored 6 and then 17 points. So I don't know why they'd score more than 21 in this one. Dylan, I think DeAndre Houston Carson's role is really great as it is. He's in a great position right now to be the safety that comes on for Danny Trevathan in the dime package. It used to be Deion Bush. Bush is hurt, and that's okay. I don't know if we're going to get a defensive score, but if we do, that'll be a whole lot. It's tough because, vengeful, I don't want to get embarrassed on Monday Night Football either, which is real trouble because the Bears have a tendency, at least in my lifetime, to when they aren't the underdogs or when they have done a whole lot of good in prime time, they tend to struggle. The bright side for the Bears here is that the last time I can remember them being in this same kind of setting, a primetime game against a Rams team that is heavily favored, was 2018, and they did really, really well. Against the Rams in 2019, it felt like it was a kind of a toss-up game because both teams were sliding really hard, but 2018, everybody picked the Rams, and it was awesome to watch. I would love to see that kind of a performance from the defense again on primetime television, though, I mean, who knows? Maybe beating the Rams would send us into a couple lost tailspin because it kind of seems like it works that way sometimes. But yeah, I mean, at this point, Alex, I don't think Teo and Lamar Miller are necessarily going to be getting snaps, primarily because Trevathan and Roquan have just left nothing to be problematic. Trevathan has been a force in the running game. I actually want to go find a play because there's one, I think it might be in the fourth quarter, that is one of my favorite Trevathan plays that I've seen because it's very, very clear about exactly what Danny Trevathan is here on the team for and like what he does in this defense. So let me keep kind of talking about it. Basically, Trevathan is bulked up and he's starting to hit people with force in the running game, and I love to see it because it's really helped out Roquan Smith. He's taking on blockers much, much stronger than the others are, or like than Roquan Smith certainly can and does. And I think that there's some serious credit to that. Let's see. I doubt it's this one, but just in case, we'll watch it anyways. Yeah, Trevathan has basically been the big backup like linebacker. He's playing like an old school Mike linebacker, and it's what is this? So let's see. Beat the road. Every once in a while, I have to go back and read the chat. I'm just like, whoa, what did we say? Yeah, but you guys are basically hitting it. Yeah, they were just like the Rams were super good in 2018. The Bears shut them down completely. And ever since then, I've always thought that it's not really a rivalry, but it's kind of a rivalry, has been a whole lot of fun to watch because it's two teams. It's not like they hate each other, but they're hitting and they're playing these scrappy old school defensive games. This is the play. So what you're about to see here is exactly what I think. It's exactly what I think Roquan Smith and Danny Trevathan need to do for each other. So I've talked about how Roquan Smith is really good in coverage. This big circle I'm drawing, it's like he has a dead zone that's like that wide. He's huge. Like what he's able to do in coverage is insane. But he needs help in the running game, and what you're about to see on this play is that they're going to double Mario Edwards. They're going to squeeze a lineman up to Roquan, and Roquan's going to get blasted. But as this lineman comes up to block Trevathan's going to get one hand on him, bounce off of him, and go hit the running back for a gain of only 3, which in modern offenses just isn't that great. And he does so with force, which is awesome. Like, this is exactly the kind of play that you want to see from your second linebacker, especially on first and second downs. Roquan gets blocked, Trevathan makes the hit, completely stops the running back's motion. Like, you can watch it on the lateral thing right here, and he ends up making a play, which is awesome. So this is the kind of stuff that you want to see from Trevathan, and it's what we're going to need more of on Monday night. Won't surprise me if Quinn doesn't get a ton of snaps with his issues against the run, and I expect McVay to attack our weak points because between Nichols, if he's doubled, Roy Robertson Harris in general on the run game, and Quinn, there are some issues that we need to have a plan for, and Trevathan's one of those plans. When he's backing up the line, believe it or not, they're actually pretty good, and especially have been in the run game. But so yeah, I mean, this should be pretty cool. I can't wait to see this game because it feels like icing. It feels like extra credit, right? If the Bears win and they look good, great. Now we're 6-1. If they lose, even if they lose and look absolutely terrible, they're 5-2. They can move on to the Saints game, see if they can patch things up. This is a great moment for the Bears because there are some that are going to say, this is the moment. This is where the Bears need to prove they're real. And I'd look you dead in the eyes and I'd say, if they didn't prove that they're real when they beat Tampa Bay and then followed it up by beating Carolina away, then what are you waiting for them to prove? That they can win with style points? Because the 2018 Bears, just for instance, they looked cohesive on offense rarely, if ever, and their defense was good enough to just dominate and suffocate games away. At this point, when I look at this Bears team, what I'm thinking is that if this offense can basically take people and stick them into like a time chamber, take them back to 2004, make them slug it out, make them get field goals, make them make plays against a really good defense that plays great in coverage, yeah, exactly like you're talking about, Ryder. Every week is a proof for real moment. But if you put these guys back in a time chamber and they struggle like Carolina and Tampa Bay did against this Bears defense, you may not need as many points as everybody else does to win. Sure, it's great when Tennessee puts 42 up against Houston, but until the moment where the dam breaks from here, I'm going to have faith in the Bears defense to shut teams down in unprecedented ways, because what they were able to do against Carolina was just something else. They gave up they gave up a couple of long throws here and there, but they just don't have a ton of weaknesses, which is great. Yeah, Jordan, I think that's kind of funny, like me and the Bears channel, because it's here and there. Yeah, Joseph, you hit on something that's totally true. I mean, for gracious alive, if they do lose, they're going to get completely devalued, but Douglas, we did, but I can talk about it here again in a little bit. But like you're talking about, Nate, I think that there is something to the idea that people out there predicting right now, they look at the offense first and they weight that 66%. Then they look at the defense, that's weighted 30%. And then the special teams pick up the other 4%. So this is really important to me, as a matter of fact, because if this Bears defense what it basically has to do is it has to transcend modern football a little bit. And that's a big spooky word, which is a bummer. But what I'm basically trying to say here is that the Bears need to play better defense than anybody in the league, regardless of what DVOA has to say about it. They have to go up against some of these high-powered offenses and keep shutting them down. They gave Tampa Bay their worst offensive output of the season. They have to keep doing that. They gave Carolina their worst offensive output on the season. They have to keep doing that. Basically, if this defense is going to win championships, it has to be a better defense than anybody else's defense. And asking your defense to be the number one defense in the NFL is a big ask. But that's where we're at, because this offense isn't incredible. But what they might be able to do, like we saw in this game, is string just enough plays together to come up with necessary points at the right moments. Again, I like to... So, Jordan, it's hard to tell. Because, so you talk about the flea flicker, and I've heard a couple of people ask, I might as well just throw it back on. The trouble with the flea flicker here is that at this moment, so... Javon Wims is even, and therefore he's leaving. If you throw this ball over the top, he's actually probably open. But the problem is that Foles gets hit so hard mid-throw that you can't really tell where the ball should go. But I would say that, yeah, Javon Wims actually does get open. Like, that is right there. That's pretty solid separation. It's not amazing, but it's something. And people have completed deep passes with less. But again, like, Foles doesn't even get to follow through. You can see his arm up right here. The ball's already out. He just gets obliterated, which, I mean, sometimes that's just how it goes. It goes back to, what is it? The Leno thing. Or not the Leno thing. The Demetrius Harris thing. He just gives up blocking and lets Brian Burns right on through. But that's an execution issue. Yeah, so... What I think is really interesting about this Bears team, this Bears offense in particular, is that even in a sputtering day, they still didn't give up any. They didn't give up any they didn't give up any 3-and-outs. They turned the ball over once on a play that absolutely has to be corrected. I'm not going to defend it too hard, but hey, it's a stupid mental decision. Like, even with the interior offensive line pressure, and Foles won't make it going forward. At least I sure hope so. But so at that point, I think that this offense actually is at a spot where the average scoring right now is about 25.5. But so at this point, the Bears are never going to match that. I don't think so anyways. 25.5 points as an average? No way. But they may be able to generate 21, 21.5, 22, 24 points. This 23-point outing, it's funny. At this moment right here, most would say that this was a bad offensive performance. I think we'd all agree. But then you take a look at what the Bears offense technically did, and I just want to remind everybody that the Bears offense got a free possession, sure, but even despite their failures and serious, the timeout issues and whatnot, they score. So they're up 7-0. They do exactly what they should. They cash in on a defensive gift. The Carolina responds with a field goal, and the Bears, after 2 drives don't work out, respond with the next field goal. So they answer. Drive late, but they answer nevertheless. Carolina gets a field goal. Bears answer with a field goal. They move on. The Bears score first after a couple of turnovers, so now it's a 2-score lead, and then the Panthers drive back. They get a touchdown, so the Panthers answer, and the Bears answer that back with another field goal to make it a 2-score lead. Against teams like the Chiefs, these things don't matter as much. Don't get me wrong, this is not amazing offense from an NFL perspective, but with this defense, giving them a 2-score lead meant that they could play a little loose. They give up another field goal off of a big play in a nice series that we talked about a little while ago, and this is pretty much the only moment that I would say that as a unit and in a results perspective, the offense really failed. Because here on 3rd and 2, I am perfectly comfortable. I've said this again, at the end of the day, I personally don't care what the play call is. Get the first down. My bottom line is convert the first down. And this play call gets Allen Robinson with a step. You could say that the throw is not good. You could say that he drops it off of a contested catch. I really don't care. And I don't matter. It doesn't matter to me because the Bears don't convert, and these are the details that they need, because even an okay offense that's just doing this job would close out a game. If he had this back, I wouldn't be shocked if Matt Nagy would hand it off. Like you're saying, still inexcusable. That's really all I'm trying to say here. I'm not trying to defend the call. My big point here is there's a difference between excuses and understandment. So they get, or the original look, believe it or not, it looks like it's Patterson on this wheel route, but they cover that well, so he turns inside, tries to make a play to Robinson. The throw could have probably been further out. It's not the world's worst throw. Foles throws a lot of these balls that the receiver has to make a really nice play on it, but it is technically makeable. Either way, pick up the first down. I don't really want to hear about maybes and ifs, ands, or buts, because I understand not wanting to run the ball. Passing is what you're best at, but this angle? Yeah, sure. So when passing's what you're best at, I don't mind you doing what you're best at. Nagy thinks from a passing mindset, and this is, at the end of the day, what he wants his team to do well. But at the end of the day, my personal opinion is that I don't really care whether they run the ball or pass the ball. You got to get it. You can do it whatever way you want to. I know Andy Reid would probably pass it, and that's not weird to me. Obviously, he has Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill, so it's a little different. But that's one of those things where I don't mind Foles going back to what he's comfortable with. But every time I see this, this is where I've seen this play a couple of times. I just can't help but think that at this moment, it's not an easy catch, but it doesn't look to me like the defender gets his hand involved. I don't really know. I'm not trying to make an excuse again. I've talked about it. I don't care who made the mistake. Just catch the ball and move on. And that's at least my perspective on it, because the 3rd and 2 play call, again, do whatever you want. But if you pick up the first down, the game's over, and that's A-okay with me. But yeah. Andy Reid has pulled a lot of games by passing too much. I think that's hilarious. They're very similar, especially in their game management. They both have some problems. KC has so much ridiculous talent on offense. It is absolutely insane. But yeah, so at this point, I sure hope we sign Quentin Spain. I think he's really solid. Like I said, I'll say it one more time just so it's obsequiously clear. At the end of the day, whether it is Matt Nagy making or calling a run and them converting or not converting, I just want to see the first down get converted eventually, because it feels like every kill shot this offense goes for, they don't get, and all they got to do, and this is obviously easier said than done, is tighten up execution enough to where they can convert even some of those. Yeah, Ilan, are you in here with the Discord link? Because honestly, I'm just not that Discord savvy. But at this point, I think we're about ready to accept invites, which is exciting, and I'd love to see y'all there. Let's see if this works. How do you do an invite link? Let's see. I'll figure it out at some point. But yeah, I think we're about ready to lock all this up. Yeah. Put it in there, Elon. I trust you more than I trust me, but we're about ready to go. I like the Bears in this next matchup. If I was spread betting, if betting was legal in Texas, I'd take them. I think that there's a lot to like about the fact that they're +6 in what's usually a slug match, grindfest game, and this is exactly the kind of point where I am hoping that Nagy can show us a little bit more of what makes him a pretty solid game planner and coach, in my opinion, and a little less of the execution malaise that happened in 2019, because that stuff was ugly and I'm just tired of watching it. This is a big season for Nagy. He has a lot of perspective and ability to change opinions of him, and it comes if he wins games, keeps winning games, and the offense starts executing a little more. And I really like this ability that the Bears have to prove themselves both on defense and on offense, and from a coaching perspective from here at this point in the season going forward. If there's somebody else that I'd like to see get a bigger role, I think we all would. The Rams are a solid team. They're not laughable. They are just as much like a potentially good team as the Bears are, and they have just as many potential holes as the Bears do, because if the Bears are ultimately going to impress people, it's going to be because their defense is better than people expected, which, hey, you know what? That'd be really cool. One player that I'd love to see get a slightly bigger role, I'll show his big other highlight right here. I'm not seeing it, Ilan. Are you posting it in the chat? At least I'm not seeing it, but that's just what I've got. Here's Cole Kmet's big run where he catches this ball, and look at him go. He runs on, gets 11 yards. I would love to see this Bears defense, or not this Bears defense, that's just words falling out of my mouth. I'd love to see Cole Kmet get a little bit bigger a role. I don't see why he can't play in place of Harris, but hey, maybe it's just a practice thing. At this point, in case anybody was curious, by the way, this is right about where a rookie TE would normally be at the week 1 level. So yeah, I think Harris just wants to make sure that he doesn't end up in front. So somebody talked about Harris being lazy. This is where football gets really complicated, because if Harris runs full force, he still doesn't have a throwing lane, because this linebacker, and especially this guy right here, are literally standing in front of him. So I think he tries to slow down so that potentially Foles would have a backside lane, but he knows just as well as we do, Cole Kmet's the read. He's an easy dump-off throw, and he just kind of stops running, because what's he going to do? Help? But yeah, at this point, I'm right there with you. I think that this is a very winnable game for the, let's see, does that go through? You guys let me know if you see that, and I hope that works. But so at this point, I think that the Bears have a lot that they could do. I'd love to see Cole Kmet get a bigger role. There are a lot of people that are already making him this huge and big colossal failure. I don't think that's 100% fair. Sure, I'd love to see the guy have more than 3 catches and 3 targets here at this point in the season. But when I look at, as silly as it sounds, this catch right here, it gives me a lot of, let me find it. It's not that one. It's this one. This catch is pretty neat. I'm perfectly comfortable with this kind of play from my tight end. Do I think that Cole Kmet is ever going to be Zach Ertz or ever going to be Travis Kelce? I don't. He's just not that fluid. But at best, he could be Kyle Rudolph, and my hope would be that he can at least be Kyle Rudolph light. I'm perfectly comfortable with this. This catch is pretty nice. Again, the route is not great. It's a very round route, as you can see, but he's in the middle of a lot of bodies and traffic, and he goes up and he makes a catch with a hand over him. There are a lot of guys that drop this ball. the one that comes to mind is Trey Burton, who I know plenty of people have a whole lot of opinions about old Trey Burton. And in this case, I just don't think he catches it. And Shaheen might catch it, but then he'd have gotten hurt on the way down, which would have been a real bummer. If Kmet can at least be a solid TE2, maybe even a flex TE1, let alone if he blossoms into a Kyle Rudolph-like tight end, I think the Bears may have something that they're able to use going forward, even if it's not an elite move tight end or something like that. It's okay. Not every draft pick needs to be a home run. And when your back-to-back second rounders are Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson, guys, let's be honest, Cole Kmet's pick, it's just, it's not as required to be as good as Jalen Johnson is, because he's really fabulous. But so at this point, what I will say, Jack, just first of all, welcome to the stream. Thanks for showing up. I think that the Rams are a solid team. Their defense has impressed me throughout the season. I gotta tell you, the fact that y'all have only beaten the NFC East teams are, it makes it kind of tough to judge, because what happened against the 49ers was pretty standard Rams. I've always been back and forth on Goff, just to let you know what I think, Jack, because I've seen Goff play some amazing games, and then he comes in, plays the Bears, plays the Patriots, plays defenses that are able to pressure him and throw schematic issues at him, and he seems to kind of fall apart. I like the Bears to at least cover the spread, and I'm really curious as to who ultimately wins the game, because these these Bears-Rams games have been really, they've kind of been turning points for each team throughout the season. Last season, it felt like the Rams were able to kind of help cobble things together after the Bears win, while the Bears completely fell apart, like the wheels fell off. And in 2018, the Bears legitimized themselves with a win over the Rams. Either way, guys, it has been awesome talking to you guys. It's been almost 3 hours at this point. I think Ilan's right, and it's about time to lock it down. And hey, who knows? You may be right, Jack. Maybe he did get better. He's looked a little better against us, or not against us. He looked a little better against other competition, but that 49ers game was tough. Either way, I think, guys, it's about time to shut it down. Feel free to scroll up and find that Discord link if that's your thing. But I'm excited to see what happens in this next Monday night. I'm going to see what I can do about trying to put together something related to what we talked about tonight, but about the defense with a little more time and effort. And thanks so much, Sam. I just want to provide the best Bears content that I can. It's tough, and if there are questions that you want me to try to address, I can. There are some battles that are just getting exhausting to fight. You guys probably know what they are, but I will say that this was a bizarrely three-phased effort tonight. What was so funny about this, closing thought, is that the offense was incredibly inconsistent, but ultimately productive. The special teams did everything you could have possibly asked for them, outside of maybe a blocked field goal that they did kind of help, they kind of created a missed field goal at one point just through solid defense, and then the defense was outstanding, and that in and of itself, a 2.5 phased approach, can win a lot of football games. And this will be, again, I'll say it every week until we know anything, this is a big moment for Matt Nagy to prove that he can take an offense that, don't get me wrong, it's not super great, talent-wise, but clean up what you just said, the sloppiest thing. The offense needs to get better at what they're even trying to do, and a few less mistakes. I saw plenty of mistakes around Carolina, so sure, they're gonna be these assignment driven mistakes. They're gonna kind of happen all over the place, but instead of 8 a game, try to cut it down to 2 or 3. That's probably better for everybody involved. But yeah, I am really, really curious at this point to see what happens on Monday night. Can't wait to watch the game. Always fun to watch the Bears. Y'all, it has been awesome. If you like this kind of stream, please like the video. Let me know in the comments section here or afterwards what you think of it, and feedback is always appreciated. The channel is growing at a rate that I can't believe. It has been so much fun getting to create content for y'all and analyze football. But until next time, friends, this is awesome. Can't wait to see y'all next Wednesday. Bear down. Thanks so much for hanging out with me.